I had a Chinese co-streamer reach out to me to just have a chat with me about this, and he was basically telling me that everyone in China is convinced it's a conspiracy from MESA to make sure that
It's
Rear
fucking
Adam
bullshit.
loses and the Mongols go forward, and it's
Yep.
fucking hilarious because we heard players at that event literally say it's a conspiracy from MESA to make sure that Rear Atom can play because Kaze is sick, so they want him to have more time to recover, right? So we've literally heard every spectrum of the conspiracy theory at this point, which is, you know, that just sort of goes to show you, yeah, man, like, don't blame Malice for
the conspiracy gets 3 times funnier though when you filter it through 2 layers of Google Translate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, like your mother's goat will fuck your ass or some shit like that. Like, what are you even saying, man? Like,
what is these conditions? Your dog would play Counter-Strike or some shit, you know? Like.
Okay, so this is episode 41 of Geographically Challenged. We're back again for the 3rd episode since the revival of Geographically Challenged, which I'm super excited about because I didn't even know if we would get that far. So we'll call that a win. Now, no Bleh this week because he's over in Rio, and so we've had to replace him. Teatime's on for the first time on Geographically Challenged. One question I have for you, Teatime, to start this off is, do you feel sufficiently geographically challenged to be invited onto this show?
Mate, I almost didn't make it to Mongolia because of visa issues at first. Then I almost didn't make it there because of passport issues second. So I feel like I might be the most geographically challenged person amongst a lot of us.
Good. All right, well, that settles that. And Pilski Mac, obviously, you know, you've been here before. Everyone knows, loves you sometimes.
Hi.
Look, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got the Asia RMR, obviously, to recap. We talk about the NKT changes, what that could mean for that team, Asa and Sprout, and how that's obviously played out. The Indian 250k USD league. What is that? What the fuck's going on there? And obviously the Mongolz at Rio, who have unfortunately just been knocked out by Heroic as we start this recording. So let's start off with the RMR, and let's start off with the bad, because I know that's what everyone wants to hear. That's the clickbait stuff, all right? So everyone wants to hear us talk about what the fuck happened at the RMR that was bad. And obviously, you know, you've got Teatime and Mac and myself who were all there. Pilski, I mean, I don't want to rub it in, mate, but you weren't there, so you'll just have to give us the perspective of how the stream was.
He's leaving. He's gone.
Yeah, Clown Fiesta. All right, so
You fucking clown, aren't I?
Oh.
Yep. Let's start off with the very, I guess the biggest talking point, the biggest worst part of it to me was obviously the day one delays and the tech issues that we had on day one, which obviously then had a bit of a knock-on effect to the rest of the entire competition. It meant that we had to have four best of threes, rather, I should say, on day 3, and, you know, people playing late and blah, 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 and all of that stuff. So, I mean, on day 1, we only got 1 best of 1 played, and then like 4 rounds of another best of 1, which again was also part of an issue because that was, you know, like we played a few rounds of a map, and then we had to go and take a 24-hour break, and there was conversations around potentially some competitive integrity issues with that. But we'll get into that when we talk about Vertex. But you know, what was this like from your perspective, Pilski, first? Because I know I've obviously kind of heard it from Teatime and Mac, but you told me like you tried to watch or something, and then you tuned in like a couple of times, and it was just like every time you watched, there was just tech issues on the stream, and you just were like, all right, I'm just not watching.
Yeah, literally every time that I even clicked on the stream, it would just be like on a holding screen. So I didn't really watch any of the RMR, if I'm honest. Like I didn't get a chance to watch it because every time I clicked on the stream, there wouldn't be anything happening. I think my magnum opus joke was asking you guys what the score was in the Vertex Rare Atom game, because I noticed the HLTV scoreboard hadn't moved in about 3 or 4 hours. So it was clearly a bug with the HLTV scoreboard. It wasn't live updating. So I just needed to ask you guys what the score was, and you told me it was still 1-3. So there you go.
Yep, and it was 1-3 for a very long time. Might have been the longest best of 1 in history. Mac and Teatime, I mean, you know, we obviously kind of had to live through that, but I know you probably don't want to say too much bad. Like, I feel like you guys are not super inflammatory when it comes to talking bad about tournament organizers. That's kind of almost what we needed Bleh for. But what did you sort of feel about this whole situation, right? Look, like, it was not fun.
I got a funny story. We were out on the town checking out the new fortress in Sydney the other day. and Apoc Dud was there, and he said he was driving during that Vertex game. He was driving from Sydney, like up north on like a 2 or 3 hour trip somewhere. And he thought that same thing as Pilly, because he was like looking at the HLTV scoreboard every now and then and saying, oh, like it must be broken. Like what's going on? And then he tuned in when he got there after driving for 3 hours and saw that we were still just like going through tech delays. And he was like, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, hey, mate, look, I wouldn't believe it either. My way of summing it up was I always thought that that game was going to be played that night, so much that if you watch the vlog that Jordan is probably editing at the moment, I shit, you know,
it's in there. I've got it in. It's in.
I believe so much. Look, this is how much I believe. Scull my coffee. It's happening. A minute later, the producer walks into the room and goes, all right, guys, we're gonna delay this until tomorrow so you guys can all go to bed. And I was like, awesome. Really glad I've just sculled the coffee. And that's pretty much like, you know, the funny side of it. The other side is we did, you know, a whole week's worth of fill in one day, Jordan. So that was fun as well. We ran out of all our material, and then it just went, you know, down the deep end from there throughout the rest of the week.
I think I would made the massive mistake of also looking up to Jordan and Mac as the veterans there. So I'm like, oh shit, well they're having their coffees right now, right? So that means that we're definitely going to be going into this game. Like these guys know what it's all about. They're the ones with the producer in their head, because I'm not the one who's live for this match. They're talking to whoever's up there. So I just, you know, just immediately get 2 cups of coffee, and it's 9:45 at night and everything. And I have no caffeine tolerance because I don't drink caffeine normally, so that I can have it be more effective at events. So I was up till 3:30 at night, just being like, well, I'm just twitchy and uncomfortable waiting for the next day to begin.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think the worst thing about that whole situation for me was not that, like, I wasn't actually that pissed at all. Like, I don't know what it is. When I'm working in Australia and there's mad delays like that, I get really pissed. And I think it's because I have somewhere better to be.
Mate.
Yeah, because I have somewhere better to be, right? I can go home. I can be doing whatever I want. I'm like, I don't need to be here. But when I'm in Mongolia, I'm like, well, what else am I going to be doing all day? You know, like, I'm just going to be fucking probably sitting around the hotel talking to you guys anyway. So I may as well just live with it. But the worst thing for me, and what kind of annoyed me a little bit, was that it was always like, oh, you know, we're going to be like, oh, we fixed it. We're going to be ready in like 10 minutes. All right, guys, let's get ready. But it was like, they'd tell you 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, and then you'd be sitting there waiting, and it would be like 20 minutes later, and you'd be like, okay, what just happened? Like, the communication was not great, unfortunately, but like, obviously, you know, these kind of things happen. And I think for me, I was actually not that mad at all. Like, I was like, you know what, this is the reality of the situation. It happens. Something's fucked. It's going to get fixed at some point. And all I can really do is wait. So I don't know if, like, I'm not being harsh enough.
Yeah, you guys are being very tame. You guys are all being very tame. Well, to be fair, like, it's kind of like par for the course in terms of like our standards of like Asian events. I feel like most Asian events that most of us have been to have been a bit cooked in terms of one aspect or another. Like, something always kind of gets messed up, and there's always something, whether it's production or like the communication or language barriers or scheduling, or, you know, in this case, the servers and stuff like that. There's always something that will go wrong. But I think, like, if you don't want to like piss off, like, you know, tournament organizers or and all that kind of stuff, that's fine. You don't have to be like overly harsh, but you should at least like give a fair amount of criticism, like where it's warranted, because this might have been like one of the worst cases of delays I've seen at an RMR ever. Like, since like maybe, what was it, like there was some pretty bad I remember there was like one Blast event where they had to delay for a whole day, but there haven't been that many events where they've had to delay a whole day of play.
Yeah, basically.
I think you're thinking of like the first Blast ever, like the Blast, was it in Istanbul?
I think so.
Wherever it was in like 2017 or something. Yeah, no, listen, it was terrible. We weren't very upset about it, is all I think was more the point, because there was sort of this like internal realization that shit was going to go down when the rehearsal got cancelled and pushed to the next day. And then, you know, that was like supposed to be the morning, and then the morning became, you know, a little bit closer to noon, then noon became right next to the show. And then when before the show is happening, only one person has done the interview, and that was Mac.
So happy, so happy that when, as soon as that rehearsal didn't go ahead at whatever time it was that morning, like the next day, I was like, nah, I'm going to the gym now, or I'm not going to get to go to the gym today. And I was like, it's not happening. I'm trusting it's not happening. Went, had my pre-workout, was at the gym for like a good hour before it was like, all right, guys, let's get you down to the green room. And I was like, bang, boom, upstairs, shower, back down. And then we even sat there for another hour once we got down to the green room anyway. So
I mean, look, Mac, you're genuinely like borderline insane about the gym, considering that the night before that, we all just get like a message in the group text being like, guys, it's been lights out at the gym at 10, but I've had my pre-workout, so I'm going to work out in the dark.
Yeah, that was strange.
Mac genuinely worked out in Ulaanbaatar with like the window open at a gym at -20 outside in the dark because he'd had his pre-workout, right? So like, I feel like even if he'd had to just do the interviews inside the gym, Mac would have still just been pumping iron away.
Yeah, as long as you say that's fine, Mac, because you got to be careful. If Mac has his pre-workout and you get on his bad side, yeah, it's dangerous. That's dangerous.
Yeah, my filter, my already thin filter gets even thinner, essentially.
So I mean, I like the point you made, Pilski, though, about like expectations, and I think that's kind of where this is coming for me, because I've worked a lot of Asia CS events, and almost every single one of them has been like horrible from the tournament operation perspective. Like, if you remember those Extremes lands we went to, it was like 4 best of 3s in a day. You'd start at 10 a.m. and you wouldn't finish until 2 p.m. Till 2 a.m. or something like that. Those kinds of things. So I sort of went into it, I guess, with that kind of mindset or with that kind of expectation. Not that the event was going to be bad, but just that like it was definitely not going to go 100% to plan. So
things can go wrong.
With that in mind, I think I definitely come into these kinds of events with a little bit of a, I'll say, more open mindset than some of the more recent commentators. Like, I know that we've, like, if you would go and watch like HLTV Confirmed or Talking Counter or anything like that with all the tier 1 talent, and they're all shitting on this event, and it's like, yeah, that probably is warranted, to be honest. But like, the reality of the situation is this is never going to be what you want it to be. Like, it's never going to be that tier 1 product. You're never going to have the best production team. You're never going to have the best admin team. You're never going to have the perfect fucking whatever, which is unfortunate. I'd love it to get to that point, because that would make my life a lot easier. But the reality is it's never going to be that unless something significantly changes with the way that these events are run. And, you know, obviously there's conversations around potentially having it like, you know, we need to take it over to Europe. So Blast can like run it all in Copenhagen, or like ESL can do it in wherever they want to do it, you know, for example. I don't really like that idea personally. Like, I'm kind of a bit more of a fan of having it in the location, like in the Asian region. Probably some personal biases because of that. You know, makes it easier for me to work, and I like being able to watch it, as you say, Matt, because of time zones. I also think it's good for the region just to have events in the region. Otherwise, at that point, you're just basically outsourcing it and saying like, well, you know, this is a quote-unquote Asia CS event, but like, it's in Europe. So like, all Counter-Strike at this point is in Europe. So if you're not in Europe, well, what the fuck are you doing? And then it's just like, the region doesn't really exist. It doesn't feel like it's an event from the region if it's not in the region, in my opinion. So anyway, that's a little bit of a talking point that I think we can get into a little bit later, because I had that as like one of the good points of this event. So we can talk about that a little bit later on down the track. But I think we should move on and talk about the sickness, the illness that was going on, because I know that's been brought up a lot, and I think there's a couple of things that I want to sort of say about this one, because I know, again, some of the rhetoric that I've been sort of reading and seeing around this is that the hotel food poisoned the players or anything like that. I personally don't think that's true. Like, I don't know about you, Teatime and Mac, like, but I obviously, and I know you guys were eating the food from the hotel the whole time, and like, none of us got like deathly sick. Yumi was sick when he got there. He wasn't feeling great, but I have a suspicion that was from the airline food. Teatime, I don't know if that... You were fine, right? But you flew on the same flight as him.
Michael definitely said it was from the airline food for him. Personally, obviously, we fly on the same flight on the way there, so maybe it was from the London one as well. It's entirely possible that maybe there was one dish that wasn't quite okay with his sensibilities as well, because you have to remember, you know, he is coming from England and whatnot, pretty strict health codes, yada yada yada, all that good stuff. Because I'm just saying, I was just super happy about the food there. I was just lapping it up every day, being like, oh my god, this is great. They've got like legitimate halal options as well and everything. Admittedly, I only had like a limited portion of the menu, right? Because I only eat halal, so I've been given that God certification, so I should be fine anyway. I don't know about the rest of you heathens out there about how you were feeling, but I assume you were doing all right too.
Yeah, I thought the food was great. I think everyone read Loba's tweet longer, but like I was having a chat with Loba at the gym, and he was saying on Twitter he loves to ham stuff up a little bit, go to the lean towards the drama side of things. But in terms of like when he said the food was dog shit, I was like, man, the food wasn't dog shit. Like I was hitting my macros and then some, like every single meal. I could go back multiple times for lunch. You go at the start of lunch, you wait like 2 hours, they're still doing lunch, you go back. Look, maybe some of the food had been sitting there a little bit longer, but like you'd see the stuff that was fresher. So you just go for the stuff that was fresher generally. And then, anything that looked a little bit like people had stayed away from it, you just probably stay away from it too, so it hasn't been sitting out for too long. I feel like that's just a general buffet rule.
Yeah.
But then towards the last couple of days as well, there was something that I think I had a bit of an allergic reaction to. I don't know if it was the honey, because the honey tasted like really weird, like just different, right?
It did taste
pollen
different
from a different region.
Yeah.
So it was either the honey or there was something else I ate. I think there was...
It was like some seeds
the
in your
muesli. Yeah, the muesli had like a
a
different mix of stuff to what I'd usually eat. And then on like the second day, I had a bit of a weird feeling in my throat, and I was like, "Ooh, don't like that." So I just changed it back to basics like chicken rice, meat rice, and that's essentially what I ate for the rest of the trip. Other than copious amounts of boiled eggs and dragon fruit.
Workout.
So that was it.
And pre-workout.
Yeah. I think people do not think enough about what they're eating when they go to events like this. Like for me personally, I'm very like I'm playing it fucking safe when I go to events. It's like I'm eating the rice. Like rice is always gonna be fine. You're not gonna get sick from rice. I'm never ever touching the seafood. Doesn't matter where I am, even in Australia. It's just like that's a dangerous food in my opinion.
I ate a lot of fish, and I was fine. The fish
I mean, look, it works for some people for sure, but
Yeah,
like
same,
I just think
honestly.
if you're gonna get sick from one type of meat, it's probably gonna be either seafood or chicken. So I tend to definitely stay away from seafood. I barely ever eat the seafood. I don't often go for the chicken, just because it's like that's the one where if it's not cooked properly, then you're just fucked. But like at least with beef and lamb, it's like normally a little bit better. Okay, so I was kind of going for like the quote unquote safe foods. I was eating a lot of cucumbers. I don't know if you guys saw that, but I was eating the fucking cucumber every single time it was on offer. That was like half my plate. Don't get sick from cucumbers, all right? So there you go. Just eat the rice, eat the pasta, eat the cucumber, and then it's going to be a bland meal, but like you're probably not going to get sick. So something that people could take a heart in.
I will add that, listen, that shouldn't be an expectation of people, absolutely, to have to vet your meals. But also at the same time, you are coming to a new country and everything. Even if your everything is cooked to perfection, you might just have issues like, Mac did with maybe some of the random, seedy stuff in his muesli or this or that. Like maybe their chickens are on different feeds, they're going to taste different. I've had these experiences where meat just tastes really weird, but that's just how it is in a different country. So, this stuff will happen. I don't think that very many people got food poisoning. The only person who actually know for a fact did was Michael, and Michael himself was saying from the beginning, yeah, I think this was something on the flight. I don't think it was anything at the hotel because we all ate the same stuff as him. So yeah, like I said, I think that was definitely overblown, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, the only one thing I'll say on that point is it did seem to me like Malta definitely got food poisoning because like he was sick for like a day or a day and a half, something like that, and then like we saw him the next day, he was totally fine, and that is food poisoning, basically. Like,
fair.
That doesn't come from something else. Like if it's something.
Yeah, I've got no word on Malta's illness at all. Sorry.
Yeah, but I don't know where he would have picked that up. Again, like probably, it had to be from the hotel food because I don't think that he ate anywhere else either. But like, maybe just got a bad piece of meat, something like that. It happens. Overall, I don't think it was that bad. I don't think it was as bad as people make it out to be, personally. There was the quote-unquote COVID situation as well. Like, I don't know if you guys heard, but I heard rumors that Kaze had COVID or fucking Mercury had COVID or whoever it was, whatever, one of those Rare Atom guys. They were all fucking playing, as you saw, with like the cooling patch on their head because they very clearly had a fever. I mean, I'm not a fucking... I don't know. I don't feel like I'm a princess when it comes to this kind of thing. I don't want to be like, oh, if they have COVID, like fuck them, put them in. What I don't know. Like, but what I will say is when I was asked to, or in this case, actually, it was you, Mac, that was asked to interview Kaze on that last day if they won. I mean, first of all, for what it was worth, by the way, they asked you, but I was standing next to you, if you would interview Kaze before the show, before the grand final, or before the lower bracket final. Should use the correct terminology. And I just said, like, if it was me, I would just say no. I'm not going to interview Kaze because I don't want to get sick. Like, I'm like, you know. So I definitely think there's a world where, you know, ideally, if we know someone's sick, probably want to be isolating them a little bit better than I think they were isolated. Like, I don't know how the players felt about it, but they obviously would have had to play it on the same headset as him. And as I think it was Mercury, who was the other one that was sick, definitely. So Mosaic, whatever, one of them. Yeah. In fact, probably, let's be real, like at that point, probably all of Rare Adam was fucking cooked. Just, you know, because they're going to be hanging out together, they're going to be playing together and stuff like that. So I don't know what you can do about that because the event was so fucking delayed as it was. But I personally just felt a little bit uncomfortable, like even being around them.
Was COVID confirmed though?
No, it wasn't confirmed.
Because that's because we were told by everyone that it was tested and it wasn't COVID. And I know that Michael himself, because he was feeling some similar symptoms at first, he also tested. It wasn't COVID for him. It really did feel more like just a standard land flu going around than anything else.
Yeah. That is 100% right, and it's obviously an important point to bring up that it wasn't confirmed COVID, but I had heard the rumor that it may have been. But you know, who knows where that comes from? So, end of the day, they were sick. It would have been It's a hard thing to say, like, what you should do. I'm not in tournament operations, so it's not really up to me. But, like, like I said, I didn't want to interview them. I didn't want to interact with them. That's all I'll say on that point.
Speaking of COVID situations, should I tell my story about the week before going to Mongolia? And literally shitting myself. So my partner
not literally
had it. Huh?
Not literally.
Yeah, not literally. But could have, but I didn't. Partner had COVID, so I had to. In this room, I slept in this room, which is why you might see that there's a mattress just there. Yeah, because I slept in here like in the week leading up to Mongolia. So like once I got to Mongolia, I was sleeping like a king. You know, I didn't have to sleep on this thin bloody foam mattress. Managed to dodge it, you know, but I like had to I was taking rat tests every second day. I was like going to go get a PCR, but you know, I felt completely fine. There was no point where I felt like shit. And then after like a couple of days, being like, all right, cool, I definitely don't have COVID. My mum came back from a trip as well. And mum had a face mask on and was like, oh, I feel a little bit sick. Be careful. So I was like, all right. So I just gave her a quick hug. And then the next day she messages me and she's like, oh, yeah, so I just tested positive for COVID. So I'm like, oh, my God, this is like 3 days out from the flight. And I'm just sitting in my room again, just like literally just like stressed out of my mind. I'm like, do I just call up? Do I just say, hey, just in case, you know, maybe send someone else, you know, 3 days out from the event or 3 days out from travel to the event? And I was like, no, like if I've managed to dodge Jess for however long, like I've dodged this one surely. And then I felt fine. Like,
can you imagine though, if you would have been sick and Yumi would have been sick as well, we would have been fucked. Actually, we would have been really fucked because that's another thing to get into anyway. But first, I want to talk about format. Is this warranted in the bad section? Like, I don't think the format was that bad actually. And if I had to sort of choose between the format that we got here and the format that we had in Melbourne, which was obviously 4 teams, but every game was a BO3. I think I would choose this format. I think the format that we had, it was fine. Obviously, it was an issue because we basically cancelled a whole day. The only thing I'll say, Pilski, and maybe this is one you can weigh in on, is I think it was a little bit disappointing for me that Grayhound, for example, whoever comes through the top side of the bracket, only has to win one BO3. I would have liked that second round of the upper bracket to at least be a BO3. Because they had played 2 BO1s and a BO3, and it's like, all right, you're off to the major. They played like 2 days of Counter-Strike.
Yeah, I mean, there's the only reason that people aren't, this is like a classic. It's like the only reason people aren't pointing it out or complaining about it is because most of the teams that you expected to win won. And like none of the teams that you would want to go deep in the event got screwed over. But even we were looking at the bracket and some of those BO1s, like, you know, thank God Tyloo wasn't in that good of a form, or some of those like IG international boys weren't feeling good, because BO1s at an Asian event to go to the major all the way through the upper bracket. Like, I could literally see a team like, you know, Invictus or whatever. Did they end up renaming
Yeah,
the
they
event?
were Invictus, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They were
so,
Invictus, yeah.
So yeah, I could see Invictus winning 2 BO1s and then being in a BO3 to go to the major, which should never fucking happen in an event of this caliber, in my opinion. Like, you shouldn't be playing BO1s to, like, you shouldn't be able to play like 4 maps of CS. In theory, 4 good maps of CS, and then you go to the major. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I think the format was fine. You know, I think you focusing on the best of ones, like that could be, you know, where the upsets happen. But I'm thinking like more of the upsets. We saw more of that in the lower bracket. You know, Twisted Minds, that little run that they managed to pull, knocking out Eruption as well. Like, that was something I don't think anyone saw coming. But when they did it, like, they looked really good. They just played like an FPL style, just throwing it together. Decent protocols in general, good game sense, and a decent amount of chemistry between the players. That's all it took from a couple of these teams, a couple of these players coming out from, you know, the Middle East and Europe to just get the better of some of the better teams from the Asian region, Mongolia, you know?
I think the format conversation is a little bit more nuanced, to be honest, because personally for me, I think the Asian RMR is literally the best format from all the RMRs. The problem is I do still think it's a bad format. And the problem is that it's Valve's rules around how they want the major circuit to look like. They clearly have made this their objective that it will be best of 3s for qualification or for disqualification from any RMR that you're going through, right? So 2 BO1s and a BO3 to win does seem more ridiculous because there's only 2 teams going forward, but that's also what you need to get what legend stage, or whichever one like the highest one is these days. I don't even remember the labels, but you know, that's what you need to get legend stage in Europe and stuff, right? That's what you get your 3-0 out on. And what there is one thing that we have to remember is that these matches, especially for like Europe and North America, more so for Europe, they matter a lot more because of the money, because the Legends capsules and the Legend stickers give you a lot larger of a revenue split to the teams and to the players. So it's not meaningless to be Legends or Contenders or Challengers or whatever. There's a huge amount of monetary difference coming into it because, you know, Valve has effectively confirmed that on average, I think teams get just about $1 million for making the major, but then obviously teams that are making the Legends are probably making a significant amount more. I think Jordan mentioned to me just in passing, without referring to any numbers or something, that Grayhound definitely didn't make as much. So I assume that, you know, there's a substantial monetary difference as well that gets lumped in with that 2 BO1s plus a BO3 thing. So yeah, I think that system in general is kind of bad, especially because in other regions the seeding becomes a factor as well. So I actually think Asia is probably the most robust RMR format from pretty much all of them, funnily enough.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, my takeaway is I'll definitely still take that format over what we had last time. I think the fact that we had 8 teams was fucking sick. It made it so much more interesting for me. Like, obviously, we were all there. Not you, Teatime, but we were all there at Melbourne. And it was nice, you know, it was cool. And actually, by all accounts, actually, the Melbourne RMR did run better and went more smoothly than the one in here in Mongolia. But the Mongolian event felt more like an event to me. It was more exciting. I was more interested to watch it just because there was more teams and more shit going on. So that was fun. Moving on, we're spending a lot more time on this than I thought we would. HUD. Did anyone not like the HUD? Because I heard a lot of people complaining about the HUD, and I thought I would hate it. When I saw it first, I was like, holy shit, this is going to be horrible. And it took I will say it probably took me like a couple of days to really get used to it. And also they fixed the HUD after the first day of the RMR as well, where they didn't have the KD showing at all times. And, you know, they were cycling between money and KD. I thought that was really bad. They fixed that straight away. And I'll be honest, like, I actually didn't mind it when I kind of got used to it. I actually kind of liked it almost. I especially was a bit worried about the player profile pictures on the minimap, and I'm still like a little bit unsure as to whether I like it or not. I think it's definitely an issue the lower down you go in terms of like caliber of teams, because at a certain point you just don't know every single player's face. But for the teams that I knew, like when I was casting Grayhound or Vertex or Rare Atom or whatever, I was like, fuck, this is awesome. Like, this is great. When I was casting like Twisted Minds, for example, I had to keep like looking down at the player pictures in their little HUD thing and then looking back at the map to try to figure out who was where. But otherwise, I actually didn't mind the HUD. I thought it was okay.
There was one point where that got me and it annoyed me, and it was because the feed that we had wasn't the clearest feed on our monitors, like at the desk. If you remember, it was like a little bit fuzzy. And I think it was like 2 Rare Atom players had pretty similar haircuts. And it was like in the moment, I thought it was like one player, but it wasn't one player. And like I stumbled on that, and I was really, really grumpy because like otherwise would have been a really cool moment. But that was like, brush it off, moved on straight away. But yeah, first day, it just like, it was like a learning process, right? Just going, all right, well, buddy, got to pay attention to who looks like what now, or we're going to be completely cooked. My favorite thing about the map was when it zoomed in, when there was like 3 players left and everyone was going for a retake. You'd zoom in, because that was my issue, right? Like I saw it and I was like, this is going to be hell. If everyone's in like one position, you're not going to know who's who, like who's where. But then as soon as it zoomed in and it allows you to see like all the people, I was like, that's pretty cool. The one big thing that I saw people dislike the most was that it does block what nade they're holding when they pull a nade out. Like the players, when they're all alive, you can't see if it's a flash or a molly. Like you can, but you got to be really like focused on that, rather than, you used to just seeing red, like that thin white, it's a flash, the thick gray, it's a smoke, etc. But other than that, like I thought seeing everyone's health was much easier. Like visual clarity was good. They slightly changed, I think, the color of the purple and the text in the kill feed. I still think purple's a no-go. Like I felt like it was really hard to read the kill feed in comparison to how it usually stands out, like just with normal colors. Only on the purple though. The yellow, perfectly fine. Really bright, really contrast to the background. But the purple, like I'm not colorblind. I've done a million tests, but every time I'd like focus on it, I just thought it was a bit odd. Like it wouldn't pop when there was a kill. So like I'd look up and be like, oh wow, there was a kill, but it might have happened like 4 seconds ago. So that caught me off a few times. But other than that, if you're an observer that uses the numbers, like the normal numbers on the keyboard, it's a beautiful UI. Funny thing is, our observer also was the only observer I've ever known to observe with a numpad. So it didn't help him at all. And I thought that was pretty funny. So but shout out to him.
Does he see that HUD in the game when he's observing? Surely he's just in the...
He had both. He had both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Billy, to steal this one away, but the HUD personally for me is, hey, it's different for the sake of being different. I like it to some extent, but what I actually think it opens up really nicely is for the major, is what they're setting up for a few more Blast TV integrations, because there's so much more real estate on like the right and left hand side where you can have like pop-up things coming in, like interesting stats, interesting data points and whatnot, and the value of the HUD really depends on that for me. So I think what we've seen now is like a premature version, and we are going to be seeing a quote unquote more developed version to be used with the Blast TV thing, because otherwise there isn't that much like real estate on the screen to pull through like pop-ups or like anything interesting to add like as a secondary feature right now with like, for example, the old Blast HUD or like the current ESL HUD and stuff. So I think that's where this HUD should be going towards. If it doesn't, I'm still going to think it's a second-rate HUD, which is just different for the sake of being quirky and or edgy, whichever one it is. But yeah, I'm just waiting for the major before I have like much of a say on that.
Sure.
The thing I feel like was missing, but I'm comparing this as well to like ESL's newest HUD, which is the one where it shows nades dropped on the ground. And it shows the nades being thrown, like the flashes, the mollies, the nades, everything. Like you can see that on the map. So if you're a caster and like the observing might be a little bit slow, you can at least look at the map and see what util, what executes are coming through in that regard. We didn't have that. The Blast map didn't have like thrown nades, and it also didn't have drop nades. It had smokes and I think mollies when they had landed.
When they landed,
but it didn't have like... Like we'd see a kill and I'm like, oh, what? And you'd have to look at the kill feed. You see it was a nade, but you wouldn't know like where it came from, what kind of cool util it was.
I did notice
and
that too.
That happened a couple of times because there was this nade stack that was getting lots of kills on Anubis. You know, the one that was over towards B, over towards Dark. They throw it from B main to bounce off the archers.
Off the roof, yeah.
Also, I went and learned those nades last night, just in case.
You really love that. I've heard you talk about that nade like multiple times on broadcast. I was watching ANZ Champs and you were casting with like Pilly and Jimmy, like, I don't know if you guys have seen this nade, but it's really cool. It lands right next to that. I'm like, bro, you love this nade.
There's like there's specific util that pops into the meta, and it's just so good for that moment in time until everyone figures it out, right? And I feel like this is just one of those nade stacks that can just get like free kills, so it's good. It's really, really good because dark control spot. Anyway,
did you nerd out over the instant Mirage smokes when they were discovered first?
Was that the instant
Windows
smokes?
smokes? The
No,
Windows smokes,
that's something I haven't gone because that's like every spawn. That's MC
much.
level of nerding out. Although I should. So, what was my original point? Anyway, the nades. Yeah, nades are on the mini map. Very important, and we didn't have it.
Agree. All right. I assume you don't really have much to say there, Pilski.
No, not really. I think yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it as much, so I don't know. I think there's probably some good things about it, and I don't think it's a bad thing to experiment with different things and see what you like and you don't like, even if it's shit for like an event or a few events. Maybe they do one thing that's really good, and then you're like, oh, this should always be here. You know.
What I will say though as well is it's one thing to just watch the game, but it's also another thing to cast the game. So like you get two different perspectives. When you're watching, it's like, oh, whatever, it doesn't really matter all that much. But when you're casting, you can't, like, for example, like what Max said, figure out where the fuck someone died because of a nade, because it's not on the mini map, or like, is there an extra nade over towards B, like another smoke towards B that's dropped on the ground or something like that. Those things I think are actually a little bit more important when you're casting than when you're watching. But we'll move on from the HUD and
quickly. The thing that first day where like you'd want to look at, like, it was downtime and you'd want the money up, and then the KD would be there, and you're like, oh shit, I don't know if they can buy. And then vice versa, it's like, oh, I don't know who's playing good right now because I can't just press tab and like look at the KD and the money and have it all just there. You just want everything. Like that was something that was definitely missing from a casting perspective, but that could be fixed if, you know, we had just a spectator setup, which we could have, but with everything that was going on at the event,
I didn't want to. Yeah, it was a bit of a mess.
I didn't want to push.
I mean, look, I don't really want to get into like the production of it or anything like that, but it was like anytime I thought like, oh, this would be nice to have, I was like, you know what, maybe it's just not worth causing the drama of like trying to figure out this, because like trying to get talkback, for example, was like a 3-day fucking problem that didn't really end up getting solved the way that I would have liked it to have been. So I just thought, I'm just not going to mention anything. I'm happy with how it is right now. If we're moving, finish the show off like this,
don't fuck anything up.
We'll make it. Let's not mention fucking, I don't know, getting the interview in a different spot or blah blah blah, something like that. You know what I mean? Like these were the kinds of things that got brought in on the fourth day, and it was just like, oh fuck, this is gonna break something.
I feel like we just live. This always happens. It's like we just live a fucking charmed life with ESL Australia, just asking for all this shit. They're like, yeah, I reckon we could fix that, and then we have all these people who've been doing events for like years and years and years and know how to do all this shit, and then we go to like an event that with a production crew that's not as experienced, and it's like, you think something should be easy, but it's not fucking easy.
Bro, the mystery. I just want to touch on the mystery of Teatime's interview with Brace, where
what the fuck happened there?
It had to be your hand on the bloody the receiver. Like it had to be, right? Because we're looking back at it. It makes no sense. We've gone and watched the clip now. It works when you're holding it, but then as soon as you do that, it must block the receiver and the sender and just cut sound. That was
all the audio guy is just massively trolling you. Like that was so fucking hilarious to me. Like
you know what adds an extra layer of hilarity to that is that Brace is the one who did the fucking AirPods inside of his headphones and then couldn't do the interview on Chefs. So fucking classic Brace, honestly.
Yeah. If you look at that clip, it legit just looks like he's taking the piss and he's just like
he's turning it off on purpose or something, or he's
mouthing, right?
He's just miming,
you know, like just making a joke or some shit like that. That's what it looks like. But I don't know, it just wasn't coming through. I mean, look, there was a lot of like tech things. I mean, since we're talking about production and whatever, I guess we'll spend a little bit more time on it. But like obviously the interview setup on day one was really, really difficult because, like, we didn't have an in-ear, we didn't have a monitor, like, we didn't really have anything. So it was basically like, you stand here, wait for a cue from the stage manager as to when you are on the stream. And that's, like, fucking terrifying because your entire, like, life is basically dictated by this one person getting the cue at the right time and then queuing you at the right time. And as you would have seen if you watched the first day, I mean, there's clips of it. You know, Teatime throws to Mac, who is actually me on the fucking interview, and then I stand there for like 10 or 15 seconds because the cue hasn't come through to the stage manager yet from the production team. And it's just like these kinds of little things that
And
I
the
mean,
casters couldn't hear him either, so we've got no idea what they're saying.
For like the first 2 or 3 days, the casters couldn't hear the interview.
Could have, yeah.
So, like, you know, you might get repeat questions. Or, like, there was one case where I recall, I think it was Mac doing the interview, talked to a player about the veto, and then you and Yumi were on the cast, and, like, I wonder what the maps are going to be. And it's like, well, we've just fucking talked about that in the interview, mate. But you didn't see it, you didn't hear it, because, like, well, bad luck. So you just
it also worked the other way around once, where you and Mac were on a cast and you'd already gotten the veto, and I was just asking the player, "Oh, what do you think the veto is going to be?" And then there's like, "Well, we've already done it, so it's Anubis." I'm like, "Oh, well."
Yeah, so there was a lot of little things like that, which, like, in the grand scheme of it, are not really a big deal. Like, you have that happen, it's like, whatever, you know, you get over it, you get past it. But it is an RMR, it is a major qualifier. It, you know, would be nice if these things were ironed out. And I think the thing for me is, like, and this is where we can talk a little bit about MESA. Like, I know a lot of people were shitting on MESA, and a lot of people were shitting on Blast. But, like, I take a bit more of a lukewarm take to this, because I've seen how long it takes for TOs to get good. Like, I was around in ANZ in the early days when we were doing all these, like, first fucking Counter-Strike shows with ESL Australia and CG and all those kinds of things. And fucking hell, bro, like, Counter-Strike is an actual minefield when it comes to, like, server operation, tournament management, everything. Like, there's just so much shit that can go wrong compared to other games, that if you're going to add a new tournament operator, in this case MESA, into the mix, and you're not really going to have that much assistance, I guess, from Blast. Like, there was only like 3 guys there from Blast, I think. Like, I can see issues cropping up, and, you know, I don't really, like, blame anyone for it, because it's just like, I don't know, it's fucking difficult to run these events, man. I don't think people really understand how difficult it is to sort of have all these moving parts working at the right time. And sure, you know, you can be like, whatever, they should do better. It's like, yeah, they should. But, like, end of the day, MESA's run one big event, which was that one, the Blast qualifier. And by all accounts, that actually ran really well. So I don't know what went wrong here. But I think people are going to come away from this and be like, oh, MESA should never run an event again. And I actually take a different route. And I say, actually, you should give them another event, because the next time they do it, they're going to have learned from this event, and they're going to be able to fix everything that ended up happening. So, in my opinion, like, yeah, it wasn't good. It definitely had its issues. But I don't think that should stop them from, you know, ever running an event again in Mongolia or something like that. Because I think then you just kick the fucking football down the field a little bit further, and the next guy gets to have a turn, and then he's going to trip over as well. But the guy that tripped over and stood back up isn't going to be able to get the opportunity to fix it. And so you just keep having issues with new TOs and new TOs and TOs. Etc.
Unless he breaks his leg, and then it's like a lot of rehab involved and stuff like that. But that first call, do we know if that was, you know, ran from a hotel on land as well, or was it like a more controlled scenario? Because
that was in a stadium, bro. It
was on a stadium. So like that's also in an area that is made for having broadcasts, having sports at least, right? You know, like think about it like that. And then we're now in a hotel. And I remember even just like players not being able to scrim for the first day they're there because there was internet issues with the PCs in the rooms, because they're just in random rooms, right? Like there was a lot of different logistical things that were going down, and it felt like, you know, maybe it wasn't as tested as maybe a stadium where, you know, everyone can just sort of have access to all these things much faster. Maybe. You know, a hotel, there's more limits, you know, there's more restrictions on things.
It was literally one match in the stadium. I hope people sort of realize that, right? Like the Nomadic Masters was entirely online, and then they took a 2 or 3 day break to get the finals to be played in the stadium. It's a lot easier to set up for that in comparison to having to set up like consistent matches for an 8-team event. Plus, on top of that, the other point to consider is that the server standards and the server specifications and requirements are different for RMRs to everything else. Because RMRs are where Big Daddy Valve gets involved, right? They have requirements about things like, hey, this needs to be accessible through Public OTV. The Public OTV needs to be accessible on an HTTPS format now, ever since it was PGL's major, I think, was when they switched over to that, when they couldn't send the employees themselves to encode that into the client. You know, there's all of these things that come into play as well. Plus, on top of everything, Blast has never done RMRs. The RMRs themselves are one of the biggest logistical nightmares for any tournament organizer to be doing. And the idea that they're going to be doing them all simultaneously in 3 different continents, including 2 countries where they're working with comparatively newer operators, that it's going to be a shit show. Quite frankly, this was just a particularly bad concoction. And unfortunately, the only way to have gone around it was to be saying things like, hey, MESA can't have an event, but also Blast can't have their major, because then Blast can't do the RMRs because they've never done the RMRs before. And when you start going down that route, it does become increasingly ridiculous, the idea that these guys shouldn't be given another chance, either Blast or MESA, in that regards. Now, that being said, they did absolutely compromise competitive integrity in a lot of different ways, unfortunately, and that sucks. They should be held to the flame for that. But also, at the same time, I'm sure that if ESL, for example, is running an event who are used to having to work with like all these different people, etc., and they're used to knowing that, hey, what will go wrong beforehand when you're doing multiple events across the world like this, maybe they have someone coming in earlier, maybe they have different like server requirements, or that, hey, you have to hire these 3 people for this thing, otherwise we're just not going to work with you, right? You have to have FACEIT on board. We don't care if it's going to be more expensive. We can talk about that and like who's footing the bill or whatever, all of these different things that could be going into it. And I say this with zero insight on how the inside of Blast works or how the inside of ESL works, but this is just pure speculation on my part, because ESL was also just running some pretty goddamn terrible events and qualifiers once upon a time. For if people don't remember, like the 2015, 2016 era, ESL was just, everyone was like, well, these guys suck. They're literally the worst tournament organizer out there. And now they are the standard.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I don't think if you want to run events in Asia and you want to have them run perfectly, there is anyone that can do it except for ESL. Like I don't know of any tournament organizers in our region that would pull off that event that MESA had to run without an issue that is not ESL.
Maybe perfect world, but yeah.
And that's even like when you bring in, international ESL too. Like when Pilly, remember when we went to like Pro League 2019 in like Malaysia? They were still sort of setting up the Malaysian office, and there was things that went wrong. There was tech issues on the production side. It feels like audio is a really hard thing to just master. We've been pretty lucky at ESL Australia. We have some really good audio guys, but even like overseas, there was some crazy things going on in our ears from MESA. Overseas at Malaysia, there was crazy things going on in our ears every now and then. Sometimes, faders, a little bit hard to slide up and down. I don't know. Sometimes it might just be, putting mics on. Sometimes it might just be, somehow there being a big booming like just coming through
that happened
in our
too.
ears.
Yep, by the way, that happened
in our ears, or also on the broadcast, because I went back and would watch it and the sound was there, and I'm like, I don't even know how that happens. I don't know what that sound is. Has someone just like half pulled a cable out and let it just?
That's what it
just
sounded
hang? Like it was.
They pulled a cable out at the wrong time or something like that, and it just went on the broadcast or some shit. Like, and then
we already had.
And you're like, oh. What was that?
Yeah, I already had because I like listening to my side tone because I feel like I need to for casting. So I have my sound pretty loud if the side tone's low, and I just have to deal with the higher volume of everything else. And then when it's already up and that screech comes through your ear, it's very much like you gotta take that in. Wow, I've lost some level of hearing from that, and you just the show must go on. You just keep going.
Anyway, look, I mean, my takeaway is, and I want to move on, my takeaway is I think it's a shit take to say that MESA and Blast should never host the RMR or a major again. I just think that's just stupid. I think you've gotten past the part now where they've done it shit, and in theory, they should do it better next time. So you've got to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them another run at it. Otherwise, like, what was the fucking point of just running this shit event? Like, you don't learn anything from it. You give it to the next person who's going to now run another shit event. So, hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully they get another one, is what I'm saying, in the future at some point. Let's move on. The only other thing that was like not game related, I know we're only fucking just about to get into game related stuff, and we're already basically an hour into the show. The only other thing I'll say that I thought was a bit of a downer was that there was only 4 talent. I think we definitely needed at least one more talent there, one more person who would be a dedicated interviewer. I think it would have been nice to have a desk host as well, and then potentially have an analyst desk as well as the casters, because obviously for the four of us, we were doing all the roles, right? We were hosting, we were fucking interviewing, we were casting, and you'd run into situations, and I know you guys also had this issue where like you would finish casting a series. There would be like the post-match interview, which would be like, okay, let's say Mac and I are casting. Teatime does the post-match interview. We've filled until the interview. It comes back to us on the desk to close out that segment. We say, all right, blah, blah, blah. You know, this is the match up next. Goes to a break, 3-minute break. One of Mac or I now have to run upstairs to do the pre-match interview for the next match. And it's like, I haven't even thought about the next match. I've been fucking focusing on casting the last match. Yeah. So I don't know who I'm going to be interviewing. I don't know which teams. Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky if I know which teams are playing at this point. Because in my head, I'm like, okay, now what's the next match? Okay, let me figure that out. And then I'm like, okay, of these players, who do I have to now interview? Oh, now what the fuck am I going to ask them? Because like I haven't been thinking about this match at all. So it did get a little bit difficult with that. I think we would have definitely benefited greatly, especially for the amount of interviews that they wanted to have, because they wanted a pre-match interview and a post-match interview for every game. If you're going to do that, you can't have the casters be doing that. Like we got it done, obviously, because we had to. But I think you definitely need to have a dedicated interviewer. And hey, there are no shortage of people in our region that could have definitely filled that role, in my opinion. So all I'm going to say is I think we needed more talent there if this was the kind of format. Granted, the format got fucked by cancelling day 1. So we had a massive day 3 and everything was a bit squished. And so that did make it feel worse. But I think at minimum, a dedicated interviewer would have been really nice to have. And of course, if we want to talk about the prestige of the RMRs and stuff like that, then I definitely think having an analyst desk as well on top would have been really, really beneficial. And when you've got people like Pilski and Bleh, for example, who are not at that event, that you could easily get at that event. Like, you could just hire those 2 guys and then hire some fucking random guy to host a desk. Whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Keep the casters exactly as they were. You've got a banger desk. You've got banger casters. Boom. Everyone's fucking happy. But we were just lacking 1 or 2 talent, I think, in my opinion. It doesn't really matter who it was. Obviously, I'm friends with Pilski and Bleh, so I'll say them. But, like, I just think we needed extra talent at that event.
I mean, Jordan, I do want to push back on one thing that you said, though, which is that you said that because the format got a bit screwed and day 3 got squished, it was worse. I actually think it would have been more noticeable if day 3 hadn't gotten squished. Because Can you imagine having 2 best of 3s in a day and having effectively no content other than the casters to come fill initially and whatnot as well later on? Sure. Plus, not to mention that there were so many more opportunities where, hey, if everything has gone to plan and there is that much like airtime that you have to potentially fill, or for, I don't like that phrase, not fill, fuck that, like just actually entertain people with, then there's so much more you can do, right? Like there's skits you can do, etc., etc. There's like little bits you can do. There's the desk segments can have so much value where you're putting in maybe a bit more analysis, all of this stuff and whatnot. And obviously even the film materials and the like would be more entertaining, etc. I think this was definitely like a really big missed opportunity in terms of the fact that there's 4 talent members there, and also just in terms of the fact that there could have been so much more like cool content and stuff done if we had been sort of onboarded maybe a little bit earlier on into the entire process and knowing what things would look like, knowing what the days would look like, being able to offer up ideas and whatnot. Even like the trailer videos and stuff for the teams that I was able to help out with. I just got purely lucky because I'd been in contact with MESA before. So like their socials team just had my Instagram. They could just message me and be like, hey, can we like do this together? Rather than like a concerted effort on everyone's part to put something together like that.
I thought they were really cool.
I feel like we were definitely underutilized on the media day. Our media day was a couple of photos and that was like the total of it, right? Like that was.
I don't even have all the photos yet.
Yeah. I think Jordan has the email, so you can hook you up with that. But yeah,
I got
could have
4
spoken to the
of
players.
my pictures. I didn't get anyone else's pictures because I asked Asti.
Yeah, same. We didn't get the lightsaber pictures.
Yeah, we didn't get the lightsaber pictures, but it's in the vlog, mate. Don't worry about that. By the way, the vlog's coming out next week, so if you're interested, sub. Yeah, look, I mean, Pilski, do you have anything to say here? Because you're obviously someone who missed out, and I think you should have been there.
I mean, I won't say anything about that, but I'll just say this is literally like the classic, isn't it? It's like literally, wish we could have spent some more money and got some more people on board. Wish we would have had more time to do content. Wish that we would have utilized our time better. Wish the TO would have been more organized. This is like the classic. So, I mean, this is probably, I don't know what, the 50th time I've heard this about an event. And especially our neck of the woods. I feel like events in Asia, especially, are a bit of an afterthought, and they are just they'd have the mentality of we're running a qualifier almost, and let's just try and pump it out as cheaply and as quickly as possible. And if shit goes wrong, well, then bad luck.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on from all of the not game-related stuff and actually start talking about some of the games, or at least some of the teams. I don't want to go game by game, and quite frankly, we've spent a lot of time talking already. So we're way over budget on time at the moment. So let's just sort of combine all of this. I've put in the bad. I've put Rare Atom. I've put Eruption. I've put Vertex. And for some different reasons, obviously Rare Atom finished third, which is by rights not a bad result. But I mean, a lot of us had them qualifying as first seed or at minimum second seed. The fact that they miss out on another major, fucking disappointing in my opinion. Classic Rare Atom moment, you know, looking good going into an event, just not coming together at all. Eruption, I put in the bad because I think losing to Twisted Minds as Eruption is a pretty disappointing result. I didn't think that they were going to be a team that would qualify or anything like that. I just think the place where they ended up finishing was a little bit disappointing. And also the same can kind of be said for Vertex, right? I didn't think that they were going to be a big contender, but I don't think that they were able to perform to the level at which they would have hoped to have because of multiple issues. They had a bit of a cursed run. They had that best of one, which, quote unquote, there was a surprise veto. I mean, look, Ancient against Rare Atom, I don't think that they would win that anyway, even if they got to play that on the day and they were able to quote-unquote surprise Rare Atom, because Jamyoung was just fucking in that game. So I don't know really what you're going to be able to do there. But like, okay, let's for the sake of argument entertain the fact that they felt like that they had a secret veto, that they had got it over the line, and they did start well. So I'll give them credit for that. Maybe the world is different if they play that game on the day. Even then, obviously, it goes on to be a little bit more cursed in that they play a best of 3 against Twisted Minds, and then Malta gets sick and can't play it. So, I mean, they just had a pretty fucking cursed run. They went out in last place. I had my expectation that they would at least beat Twisted Minds, and I think they probably would have done that had Malta been playing, but end of the day, it is what it is. So, for me, those are the 3 quote-unquote bad teams. I don't know if any of you guys really want to have any 2 cents in here on any of those 3.
I'll just say that related to Rare Atom, I've never seen Chinese CS fans be so vocal on Twitter in support of a team having to play in cooked conditions. I've never seen so many Chinese. I didn't even know this many Chinese CS fans had Twitter accounts to fucking spam on threads on Twitter. I've never seen.
They just made
like
them for
before. Yeah, I have never seen anything like that, and now I'm kind of curious what the whinging is like over on like Weibo or some shit like that. You know, I'm kind of want to get in there with my Google Translate and see what's going on.
I can jump in on that, funnily enough, because I had a Chinese co-streamer reach out to me to just have a chat with me about this. And he was basically telling me that everyone in China is convinced it's a conspiracy from MESA to make sure that Rare Atom loses and the Mongols go forward. And it's fucking hilarious because we heard players at that event literally say it's a conspiracy from MESA to make sure that Rare Atom can play because Kaze is sick. So they want him to have more time to recover, right? So we've literally heard every spectrum of the conspiracy theory at this point, which is, you know, that just sort of goes to show you, man, like, don't blame Malice for
the conspiracy gets 3 times funnier though when you filter it through 2 layers of Google Translate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, like your mother's goat will fuck your ass or some shit like that. Like, what are you even saying, man? Like, what is
these conditions? Your dog would play Counter-Strike or some shit, you know? Like,
Mac and I, when we were in the car to go to the airport on the way back, we were just reading those, just being like, what the fuck are these guys even saying? Like, there was some bangers. There was some absolute bangers. Did you have anything there, Mac?
Yeah, look, I feel like Vertex definitely got robbed of the best start we've probably ever seen from them. And then robbed of
3-1, guys. Come on, it's a pistol.
We don't get that much goal for us in AZCS.
I'm all for the Vertex bias, but they were never fucking beating Rare Atom. Come on.
They looked so much better. Rare Atom had no idea that it was going to be Ancient, and then they counter-stratted for 24 hours. They also were allowed to have their coaches and analysts talk for 3 minutes in between each veto, which is
Max just trying to get back some goodwill from Vertex.
Anyway, let me have my point. So
last
Vertex
place in the power rankings going into the event.
Vertex were robbed. They didn't get to play with their full 5 for like the however many international tournament. So it's just really sad that they just keep copping the short end of the stick.
And that's on MESA as well. That's on MESA as well. That was Aussie conspiracy. We haven't
Aussie
that one up yet.
Yep. What else? Yeah, look, I wasn't expecting a whole lot from IG, but I thought that they'd be doing better than what Twisted Minds did. But Twisted Minds look better run, maybe going up against slightly weaker opponents than what IG did. But IG as well, look, they just like I don't know. I just love them. I love them all individually. They're all great individuals, but they just didn't come. They just didn't look as prepared as some of the other teams, I guess. So that was a little bit sad to see. And I hope that they can work through it and come back looking just as strong. You know, I just love Mestel, man. You know, he's just such a kind, great dude. And that's all really bad for me. I think Tyloo played better than I expected. You know, and
really,
yeah.
I mean, I think they ended up more or less where I thought that they would. Personally, Teatime, I know you love hot takes. Have you got any hot takes here for our like bad section? Because next we're going to start talking about good stuff. All right. So if you want to talk shit, and I know you're the king of shit talk, this is where you go. All right. So you got 10 minutes. Go.
10 minutes? What? Yo, it's 6 in the morning here. No, but listen, I actually think that this was exceptionally bad. Like the rare atom loss in particular was just exceptionally bad for Asian CS and what it means, because what it means is that Asian CS is once again on a down spiral because rare atom were garbage in the way that they were losing, even in the way that they won up against a few of these teams, you know, up against Tyloo in their map, up against the Mongolz in the upper bracket as well. It's kind of insane to me how out-called they were getting. Like Advent just got every single stack wrong. And normally these guys play a defensive setup, right, where they're not going to go for too much information and they're relying on like Advent to be able to get all of the calls right. This was the opposite of that. This was the entire team crumbling without information, having no correct calls, having their individuals not really being there as well. And sure, man, Kaze is sick, etc., whatever. Maybe that does affect some of the secondary calling. But the amount of times I see Advent called to stack on like a B side of Inferno when it's going to be end up being an A hit, or you know, vice versa, or something like that coming in. Advent just looks like in this tournament, he looked like he was just non-existent as an IGL. And as a result of that, and as a result of Kaze being sick, obviously, the team looked so much worse. But I have to say, even if Kaze had been playing like popping off, looking at his absolute best form, I do still think Rare Atom would have lost. And I say this as someone who was actually voting for Rare Atom to be going forward consistently.
You know what is sad though is like I actually didn't think Kaze played that badly. Like I've definitely seen Kaze play worse
in the
than
last
he
series
did at this event. So like to me, Kaze, Jamyoung, they did actually all right at this event. Mosaic and Mercury went missing a little bit. Obviously, Advent's Advent. So it's not even like you can say, oh, Kaze was sick, therefore Rare Atom lost. Like I actually think his level was fine.
Yeah, he was, especially in that last series.
I'm looking at Kaze's they won Twisted Minds, by the way. Like
I'm looking at Kaze's stat page right now, boys. It's sorry, not Kaze, Advent stat page. And when it hurts me when Teatime says like he wasn't even an IGL, which means like if you look at, I put it in the Discord, like look at Advent's stat page for like just before that event and that event. He's only gone positive once. And it was a 1.0.
Do you know the first thing I saw? The first thing I saw was a 0.32, and that's against Liquid. Fair enough.
Oh my god.
Then I saw a 0.25, which was against Ents. So he's really struggling. I mean, look, his numbers were actually
one against Big.
Oh my god, his numbers were a lot better actually.
At the RMR, bro.
Well, I mean, they're better at least.
But like to illustrate the point, for example, right? Like they've been going for the same setup on Inferno for God knows how long these past 6 months on the B bomb side. Whenever they're being pressured, which is that Advent's going to boost up Mosaic onto New Box. They're going to play double New Box from there, and then for some fucking reason, Advent just starts to try and play on like the right side of the B bomb side. I know I'm getting a little bit technical over here, but this just like triggered the hell out of me, which is that they're both playing from the exact same side of Inferno. They're both covering off the same angle. They've got no one in CD to cover their cross either. They're going to be disabled by the same flashbangs that are going to be underneath the same utility. Everything is just going to be worse for them. And they ran this exact setup at least 12 times in this tournament. That's insane to me. Where is the variation? Where is the secondary setups coming into it? why is it that when I'm seeing Mongolz and Blitz and everyone just scale onto a bomb site, they know beforehand you're going to be in those positions. They're going to be pre-firing you every single time. It felt like every team had their number. Honestly, they're lucky to have gotten past Tyloo. If Tyloo themselves were looking so dodgy, otherwise this version of Rare Atom could have absolutely lost out to Tyloo as well.
My favorite was Jordan May's description of Rare Atom's B bomb site, which is they always go 2 for 2. Who is it, Mosaic that plays with him or Mercury?
Yeah, Mosaic.
Yeah, Mosaic gets 2, Advent gets 0.
It's like, great, you traded 2 for 2.
Fail. 2
But
for
you
2,
lose
perfect
you lose
shades.
the round. Yeah. I mean, and the irony is, it doesn't even matter who it is. It could be Kaze, because sometimes Kaze with the AWP goes over to B as well, and he'll get 2, and then Advent will just be sitting there like, fucking shooting 20 bullets with his M4A1S trying to hit somebody and doesn't get a kill, and then they lose the round because it's 3v3. You can't retake the B bomb site. So yeah, saw that a lot. Anything else? Anything else before we move on to the good? Anyone want to fucking throw in some spicy?
I'll start the good. I'm so glad we didn't just get like 6, 7 bloody best of ones on Inferno. That would have been so boring. And I'm glad that we got to see some overpass, some new. There was a lot of variation in those best of ones, and that first day, well,
no Vertigo though.
The first/second day ended up being a very, very interesting affair in terms of the scenery.
Yeah, I mean, I liked what we got as far as the games were concerned. I thought that the games were pretty good. What I wanted to talk about first was actually having the event in Mongolia, which I know a lot of people would say is like bad. Like, people probably didn't want to go to Mongolia or thought that it shouldn't be in Mongolia, thought that whatever the fuck situation ended up happening was because it was in Mongolia. But I think it's actually cool. I think Mongolia is definitely a region that deserves to have some like spotlight put on it. Obviously Asian Counter-Strike has been like kind of like held up by China and Mongolia for the better part of 2 years now. So to sort of see Mongolia at least finally getting a bit of spotlight and getting some sort of love, I guess, is really cool to see. So I think that they deserve to host the event. Obviously it didn't go fantastically, but like, I think it's really important to have these kinds of events in Asia, because without them, you don't give the people the opportunity to improve and get better. And therefore, like, we continue to outsource all of these events to international, and the region continues to suffer. And then inevitably there is no region. So I like the fact that MESA ran it. I like the fact that it was in Mongolia. I think the right people got the opportunity to run it, even though it didn't go well. Hopefully it means that things are going to improve in the future for the region. So that's all I'll say there. And if anyone else wants to throw in any 2 cents, go ahead.
Yeah, Mongolia was sick. We managed to get flights that didn't have 13-hour layovers, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, only a 7-hour layover, no big deal.
Yeah, that was like the longest one.
flexing,
The other
guys.
ones. Oh, we also had a
Come on, I'm feeling
20-minute
bad
layover.
now.
We had a 20-minute layover, and my bag didn't make it to the second flight. So that was a quick one on the way back. Too quick for my luggage. That was all right though. Going home is not as bad as not having clothes to wear at the event. Good things, Grayhound going through as top seed, get to, I think they're playing Forza in the fucking first
pain
round.
It's like
every time it's like
Yes.
every time without fail, an Aussie team in like who plays a Russian team in like an opening round of an event, 16-6 every
You reckon?
time, just get absolutely fisted. I don't know why, but like there's something about the Russian boys running at Aussies.
No, they can't play for us though, can they?
I'm
Might
pretty
be
sure.
sure.
It's on. They're all
It's
up
on
there, bro.
HLTV,
They're on HLTV. Just scroll down a little bit.
Okay.
And Mongol's first game's against G2. So
that
Mongol's
one's tough.
playing JKS. I win either way. If Mongols win, it's like, wow, Asian CS. But if G2 win, it's like, wow, JKS. So, everyone here should be a little bit happy.
Oh, it is first. Okay.
That is going to be an interesting game.
Well, it does lend credence to the conversation we were having, because we were all like, oh, first seed, obviously really important, blah, blah, blah. You get a better seeding. I mean, if the choice is between Forza and G2, then you'll be saying, thank God I've gone through the upper bracket there.
So that's cool. I think that's a good, Grayhound looked like everyone was playing insane. Even when they came back to ANZ champs, there was a couple of cracks showing. Maybe there was some jet lag. Maybe there was something else that didn't look as good, but they still managed to.
I just think they don't care, Mac. I really just don't. Yeah, I don't think they care. Like, they know they're going to win anyway. They're not going to fucking put in all that effort. But like, to me, Grayhound is just such a different team when you see them playing in a fucking game they care about versus a game that they don't care about.
Well, that's true. But yeah, like, good for Grayhound to go through undefeated as top seed. I feel like Twisted Minds, that was a win for them to show what they're capable of. Nice little run through the lower bracket. Always good to see some kind of underdog team that, you know, said that they didn't practice and were just there to see what they could do. And look, they saw what they could do. Everyone saw what they could do. So that was an interesting little run. Tyloo, I think, overperformed in comparison to my expectations. Did pretty well. Rare Adam was a little bit sad. And, you know, I was really happy that the Mongolz did as well as they did. But goddamn, only being able to interview Techno like 17 times through those games, that was... And then, like, towards the end, he had nothing to say, man. Like, I did that winner's interview when they finally qualled.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy.
I feel good. Like,
yeah,
like, oh,
I feel good. Yes, thank you. I was like, okay. Well, and then the best thing was, like, getting him to say a little message in Mongolian, which, you know, he had a lot to say there, you know, to the fans and stuff. And then,
I mean,
like, they just were happy it was over, I think. Like, they were all just sitting there in their chairs, not excited, really.
I mean, look, I think the thing is for Techno, he's probably like, fuck me, I don't want to do another interview. Like, I've done 15 of these already at this event.
Yeah.
I again, and this kind of comes back to the whole like production standpoint. It's like, I think if you want to have that many interviews and you want to have them with teams that don't speak English, you probably need to have translators. Like, we had no shortage of people that could have potentially been a Mongolian translator.
I was about to say, it'd be impossible to find a Mongolian translator at that event. Yeah. Impossible.
Like, you know, and what, getting a Chinese to English translator, surely can't be that hard. Maybe in Mongolia it's difficult, but like, I feel like there's definitely a world where, you know, you probably have a Chinese to English translator, and like every other team kind of speaks like English, right? The two Middle Eastern teams both had players that can speak really good English. And obviously the two Aussie teams, like, no issue. So you just need like a Chinese to English translator and a Mongolian to English translator. And like, we had Mongolian to English translators because like they were fucking taking care of us at the event. But end of the day, obviously, you know, would have been something to think about, but didn't end up happening. And so as a result, what we ended up doing was interviewing Kaze like 3 times, interviewing Dobu like 3 times, interviewing fucking Techno like 10 times. So yeah, is what it is.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jordan, I am glad that, you know, you already prefaced that I like to talk shit, because the good is where I'm going to be stepping in, because I am so disappointed that the Mongols made it through. I think this is a terrible thing for Asian Counter-Strike. I think it is atrocious, the fact that without score they have made it. And I think that I've been vindicated with IEM Rio and how it's been going. And I'm going to steal away from the topic from later on as well. Have you seen the IEM Rio match they played against Navi, where Hastika just does not exist on the server? Bartek just does not exist on the server. Bro, it looks like it's fucking Australis. It's like Device and Blame F are just playing their minds out in Blitz and Techno, and then everyone else is just like, well, thanks for bringing us here, I guess. It's a great vacation to be in Rio for a week, right? These guys look fine in the Asian RMR because, unfortunately, there is a dearth of firepower. And I think Grayhound really exposed them, actually, over in the upper bracket final, where Grayhound was quite literally just, you know, Vexite swinging out with 2 flashes and an ancient and mid every single round and getting a double kill, right? That just shouldn't be happening. And look, credit to Grayhound. That's fucking fantastic. The players are looking individually that good. And I'm actually quite excited to see how they'll be able to stack up against the other teams at the major. But just the firepower deficit that Mongolz is coming in with, considering what a talent-rich scene Mongolia is, considering that we could have had Rare Adam going forward with Jamming, Mercury, and MESA, like a legitimate firepower trio. Now I've got to be sitting here and wondering, oh, is Hastika going to pull off some sort of 5-man lurk, because that's the only way he's going to get a kill? And credit to him, I think he should be on this team, but he can't be on the team with Bartek and Hastika at the same time, not really teeing off Annihilation, just like this guy who sometimes will get to 20 kills, and then when he does, everyone's like, wow, he had 2 clutches in there, but then forget about all the 7 whiffs that he's going to have like in a game as well, right? I just think I'm so disappointed that Mongolz made it there instead of a team like Rare Adam. They just are not the best representation of what Asian CS could be right now.
I mean, like, I agree with everything you said, but at the end of the day, Rare Adam just fucking choked, bro. Like, I think sad about that. I'm at that point now where, like, you know, I go through waves. Pilly's gonna fucking laugh at me. I go through waves with Rare Adam where I'm like, I love Rare Adam, I hate Rare Adam, I love Rare Adam, I hate Rare Adam. I hate Rare Adam right now, because it's just like, at a certain point, like, yeah, we can all sit here and be like, they're a better team, they're a fucking good team, they're sick, like, they should qual, but they just don't fucking qual. So, like,
yeah,
what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, they deserve to be there over Mongolz. Fuck no. Like, you think that they're going to go overseas and play better than the Mongolz are? At this point, I have zero faith that they will, to be honest with you. Like, I think they go overseas and they just shit the bed. So,
They both don't make top 16, but at least Rare Adam looks better while not making top 16.
Maybe. I don't know. I will say on the topic of Mongolz, a little bit of me is actually happy that it is the Mongolz, because I think it's fucking cool to have Mongol stickers in the game. Like, I actually think just for that one little point, it's like, okay, you know, they deserve to be there. Just because, like, the Mongols were such an influential team at the start of Counter-Strike within the Asian region, and we don't have Mongol stickers. Maybe not a big deal to people, but like I think it's really cool that the Mongol stickers are in the game.
At the moment, all I'm thinking is, you know, you've got a big sticker, you've got a dick sticker, and you've got Annihilation. Like, that's what your AK-47 is going to have on the side of it now, and that's great.
Yep.
You know, that's great for everyone.
True.
We had Annihilation stickers before as well. In all fairness,
how much did how much do dick stickers go for these days? That I haven't even checked the market. For
I don't
a while.
know, but I had two that like whatever the second tier is. Are they hollows? I think hollows is the second tier, and then $90 now. The one where it just says dick. So
what?
Yeah, I sold him for
Does
50.
he get like royalties?
Yeah,
Everyone wants dick stickers, man.
He's doing well.
I think another little good for me, which is slightly away from the games that went down, but like having the Mongolian talent down in the same green room as well, that was a nice little insight into what was going down. We could have some great conversation with Cabal and the boys and just, you know, get their thoughts on, you know, the roster swaps, the Mongolian teams, who's the stronger teams, like, and then, you know, we'd occasionally get like some bias stuff going on, but they were, you know, all ex-pros, so they
there was
lived that
Cabal,
life.
9, and Rate were all analysts for the Mongolian broadcast. So
Tamir as well.
Oh, and Tamir was there too.
Tamir,
Yeah.
So it was good to chat with them. I agree. They had some different opinions to us, like on certain things. I can't remember who it was that they were talking about. There was one player that they were like, yeah, this guy's sick. And I was like, I've never even thought about him. It was someone from Eruption. I can't remember who it was.
Yummy?
Nah, it was who's the IGL?
Yummy was IGL. No, Fury was IGL.
Fury. I think it was Fury. I think they were talking like, oh yeah, Fury's sick, man. Like everyone loves Fury. I'm like, really?
Fury's pretty legit as long as he's like having a good game. The problem is like he plays weird spots on the map to be IGLing as well. Like he'll sometimes do like be lurking on Inferno and whatnot. So I do know that they switched around IGL duties from Dobu to Fury because they just had a terrible Challenger League right before that. And I think that sort of did show because Dobu looked very uncomfortable this entire event. Like Dobu just looked, to be honest, Dobu looked kind of bad, and considering that he is supposed to be one of the big 2 talismanic riflers of old from Mongolia, that was quite disappointing. But yeah, no, he's all right. I think he's one of those guys who players have just had a couple of like really good matches played by him against him, and they're like, holy shit, he's insane, because that's the only way they can cope with the fact that maybe they were just bad for a match. But you know, he could develop into something better, but I don't see Fury as like this great.
Yeah. Anyway, that was like, it was interesting to kind of get their opinions on how they kind of see, you know, important players, important pieces of the puzzle, and where they thought things would end up. And obviously, yeah, they were all sort of cheering for the Mongolz, and we were all cheering for Grayhound. It was kind of like interesting, that little dynamic. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that pretty much wraps us up. I will say, for the good and the bad, for the recap of the Asia RMR, I will say, I just wanted to quickly point out, like, I didn't really get to say my piece on Twisted Minds. I thought, you know, like, Doc and Spawn's pretty fucking interesting. I'd like to see them in a couple of other teams. Like, I know this team's a bit of a meme team, whatever. We're not trying, we're not pracking, but like those guys were pretty legit, I thought. So I'd be interested to see what they could potentially do in a better team. Greyhound, yeah, like, I mean, I'm kind of high on Greyhound at the moment, so I think they've done enough to convince me. We'll see how they go at the major though, so that'll be the next test. But they seem to have sort of finally figured things out with Vexside, and they're looking pretty good. And yeah, Mongolz, well, yeah, I mean, I think we've sort of set our piece there. So, Pilski, I know you
we've gone overtime, and I could literally derail this whole podcast right now because they just posted the Dreamhack groups, which is fucking hilarious a minute ago.
Okay, well, let's not get into that just yet, because
I know.
I did want to talk about it.
Both Aussies in the same group again?
No,
we'll talk about it in a little bit, Mac. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But,
all right.
We'll quickly touch on it at the end of the show because we've got other things that we need to fucking get through right now. We are over time as fuck. So, look, let's jump into NKT. The roster changed there. 9 and Senzu out. Machine Gun also got removed as the coach, and they've added Gratisfaction and Zerolt. So the roster is now Urkast, Bentet, Zine, Gratisfaction, and Zerolt. Now, if you would have given me this roster in like 2017 or 2018, I would have gone, holy shit. who the fuck is Zeralt? But the rest of this team is sick. So at that point, I think that's like the Asian CS wet dream. You've got Urkas, Bentet, Zion, Grat on one team. Like, holy fuck, that's sick. Zeralt, whatever. I don't really care. Bit of a position filler. Yep. But what do you guys think? Do you think this actually makes NKT a good team?
They've had better rosters. They haven't done shit. They're still not going to do shit. Sorry.
Yo, I think you guys are really down on Zeralt. Zeralt's literally the biggest upgrade they're getting.
No, I like Zeralt. I like Zeralt, by the way. I'm talking from the perspective of 2018.
Oh, okay.
Never having heard of Zeralt before.
Okay.
But I don't think that this is going to make this team like a fucking top team in Asia again. Like, do you know what I mean? Still, I feel like something's... I feel like with NKT, this reminds me of BTRG. If you remember BTRG, the impression BTRG, it's just like, we're going to just change our roster and hope something's going to happen. And I'm kind of like that now with NKT, where it's just like, unfortunately, I think maybe the experiment has failed. I'll give it one more chance because I like Urk, I like Gratisfaction. I want it to work. You know what I mean? I want it to work, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah. I just went on the... I know it's their old roster, but they got 16-6 by Steel Helmet. So there you go. Getting 16-6 by Captain Mo in 2023. That's just, it's a bit rough.
I'm quietly optimistic about the new NKT, not because of Gratisfaction. I actually got to cast them once. It wasn't against the best of teams, to be fair. I thought Gratisfaction is fine. I don't think he's much of an upgrade over 9, but hey, if the chemistry is better, because I'm assuming he's friends with Urkas and everything, plus it should actually improve the fact that there isn't like this massive Mongolian block in the team where there's 3 Mongolian players plus a Mongolian coach in it. So I actually think that's quite useful for an international team as well. So yeah, sure, it's a side grade, whatever. But I actually think Zeralta for Senzu is such a big upgrade. Not because Senzu wasn't sick, because Senzu's cracked. Like as an aimer, Senzu can be godlike. But the thing is, the spots that he was playing on the maps just didn't make sense for like a young 16-year-old, because Senzu was playing, like, for example, Nuke, he was playing Ramp, and that was why Nuke became one of their worst maps, even though it's one of Urka's best calling maps specifically. Because he would just play the exact same spot on Ramp consistently. He got pre-fired like 6 times in a playoff series that I was casting once on Ramp on CT. So I just completely destroyed any chance I had of winning that. And Zeralta is really good at like those kinds of decision making as well, and whatnot. In the meanwhile, I feel
sorry,
like
I know I look I look like I'm fucking tripping out. I look like I'm on drugs, I know, but there was like this massive bug that just flew past. I don't think you saw it on the camera, but I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah, no, I'm not.
You just validated everything I've heard about Australia right now. I just feel like I have to let you know about that as well. Yeah. Just stay alive, please. Okay. But no, Zeralta is actually a really big upgrade for the team. Can they contend for top in Asia? Well, maybe, because Random looks kind of dog shit right now, even in the matches afterwards. Because, you know, like it does feel like they're in their depression arc right now, where they're trying to figure out, hey, how are we going to actually, win ever? So, maybe if Rare Adam drops down, Zeralta is a pretty big upgrade. I do think firepower wise they can match the Mongolz, to be honest. Now that Score has gone and whatnot as well. There's a world where I could see like NKT coming out and maybe being like the second best after Lin Vision. I could kind of see that.
Yo, did you guys see the team list for ESL Challenger Melbourne? Did you see who's not coming? You should look. Mongolz aren't coming anymore.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah, Mongolz aren't coming. I don't think it was announced, but they're not on. They're in, like, they're replaced by Movistar. That's why I'm freaking out over here.
Kidding me?
Yeah.
All right, hang on. Let's talk about
that's
that.
big, man. That's different.
Movistar,
That's why I was popping off. I was like, hang on, Mongols aren't there. Did I miss a post?
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
But the Australian visa is not that hard to get. Why? Are they just deciding to like boot camp?
Maybe they're doing a boot camp for the major instead.
That would be so dumb.
No Mongolz.
Like they're out of Rio.
Yeah.
They can
They can come over
I don't
now.
know. Yeah.
Is it a fucking? It can't be a mistake. They don't make a mistake like that. They don't tag the wrong team and make a
draft.
But the tweet is deleted. The tweet is deleted.
Is it?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh,
you're
it is
the
two?
tweet is deleted.
Wait,
There you
let
go.
me-
We done goofed ESL.
no.
All right. Okay.
Well,
Someone just
let's-
type in MO.
Stop.
Did someone
Stop.
type in
Stop.
MO and just click the wrong?
Uh-oh,
Stop.
is the graphics guy fired?
All right, we're gonna circle back to that in about 20 or 30 minutes, all right, when we get to the point where we were actually meant to talk about Dreamhack Challenger, and we'll check again and see.
All
All right, so let's move back on to Sprout and Azza. That's pretty sad. I don't know, like I don't know what I expected with this team, to be honest with you. But I did fucking think Azza would get a little bit more time than he did. Now,
Yeah.
all I read in that article was that, even, and this is what he said, it was something like a conflict in styles. He said it was clear early on that it just wasn't a good fit with roles clashing and not having the same vision for the IGL to take and create space for the team. I mean, fair enough. I guess if you just like instantly slot in and you go, you know what, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe if you just know, you know. But like, I don't know. It just feels like they didn't let him cook. They didn't let the situation develop as it needed to be. It was kind of like, all right, we're going to plop Azza in, see if he can get us to qualify to the major. And if it doesn't work, fuck him. And now he's out again. So it's kind of like, I don't know if this is like on Sprout or on the players in Sprout or on Azza just not being good enough anymore. But it just doesn't seem like I just don't think that there was enough time to really get a good like data set. Like, I know they didn't play very well, but like he was there for like 45 days or something.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, right, where they slotted him in. He could have been a good IGL, but, stylistically, if you read his tweet longer, like, they just didn't mesh well. Certain players' roles were all overlapping and trying to relearn roles for players. When you're coming as the IGL, you got to learn new roles. You got to try to instruct people how you want your processes to work, right? Like, if Sprout are like, oh, we don't want to do that, but we will because we kind of running out of options, then there's going to be a lack of chemistry anyway. So if no one wants to adapt, then the only thing you do is, oh, cool. Well, we're going to stay as 4. Look for new IGL. It looked like there was no bad blood between.
I mean, I
Azza
don't
and
think it's
boys.
unreasonable.
It's just stylistic differences. Yeah,
I don't think it's unreasonable. But I just think like the timing, like I want to see a little bit more than that. Like I want to see like 3 months or something like that, not like a month and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, I pretty much said it on the last podcast, I think, but I think that it's the similar kind of thing as to when Azza was playing with Extremum, where it's like I feel like Aussie players in general have a big struggle in like tier 2 and 3 of Europe. It's not an easy place to play Counter-Strike online tier 2 and 3 in Europe. Like, it's literally like running the gauntlet every single fucking time. So at the end of the day, I don't think you can be expected to have results that quickly. It takes teams so long to get good at that level, and even some of the best teams in the world have a fucking struggle trying to qualify through online things in Europe. It's like, there's so many good teams. So at the end of the day, I don't really know what they expected, and I think I kind of saw something like this happening. I think on the Sprout side of things is where I feel like people on Reddit, this is like a Reddit opinion. I feel like people on Reddit have this opinion where most people are kind of going in on Sprout and they're like, what the fuck? Like, they think that, I think the organization or the management thinks that they're like a major level team because they had a good run at a major,
Yeah.
And
Like
then all of a sudden they're struggling in online CS in Europe, which a lot of teams are. And I don't think that getting Azza is going to be like, wow, we're going to go to the major again or something like that, when it's like, yeah, grinding your way through these tier 2 qualifiers and stuff like that is fucking impossible.
I just wanted to add to Billy's point. In the middle of January this year, which is only 4 months ago, 9 was the number 45 team in the world. And 9 is being gushed about by everyone about how goddamn good they are right now. Tier 2 Europe is not tier 2 at all. Tier 2 Europe has like a handful of top 15 to top 20 teams that are sprinkled across top 50 instead, because franchising systems made the ratings broken and the rankings broken, and no one knows how to rank properly with like the partner teams. This is incredibly deceptive, and I think Azza has been done hard, he's been hard done by, but also even the idea that you're bringing him into Sprout specifically was kind of weird to me in the first place. When you look at the players that Sprout have, like, they've got 2 Danish players, they've got 2 Romanian players. You're bringing in a 30-year-old Australian player to try and like put everyone together who's largely only played with his countrymen, even when like he went abroad and stuff, right? Like he's not the player, in my opinion, who's got experience to bring this kind of a core together, who've got literally no identity in any of these individual players, right? Like who from these guys has Zella's an opera, sure, but like even he's been doing pretty poorly as well. He's not been looking the same since he was on Nexus. When he was on Nexus, Zella was like popping off with Imma, who was of course on Gamer Legion and whatnot, right? This entire lineup has 4 players who've got no idea about how to actually find their heights again. And then you're bringing in a guy who hasn't been like that active in CS. And his main strengths are experience from back in the day in bigger moment matches rather than necessarily, hey, molding out players from random nationalities that he's never really interacted with to the highest extent. So it was always going to be a cultural issue. And on top of that, you're only giving him 45 days. Yeah, no, it just seems like a pretty... Like the decision-making process doesn't make sense to me all across the board.
Yeah, you hire someone for the job that you want done, not like something else, is what it feels like. And I don't think they understand that they didn't do a good job of picking the right person.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even in that case, like I still think, you know, you got to at least give him a run, even if you're like, oh, okay, maybe it's not the right person. It's like at least fucking...
I mean, if you're gonna kick someone, maybe look at your Opros at a 0.93 rating across the last 6 months versus top 50 opponents, you know?
Sure. But like this obviously fucking damages his reputation as well. Like I've seen a lot of people like, oh, Az is fucking washed, Az is fucking shit. He's using old util, the team's laughing at him. Like I've seen these kinds of conversations in a lot of these articles and shit. So it's like, now, so what? You fucking give him the chance to come back to tier 2 European CS for the first time in 500 days. He's going to be there for 45 days and then he's going to get removed from the team, and now it's like, oh, where the fuck, who's going to pick him up now? Probably no one. Like what you just fucked his career potentially.
At the same time though as well, like it has to be asked of Azza like what he actually wants at this point, because the reality I think for Azza is that I'm not sure that he can succeed in like tier 2, 3 Europe. I've seen enough games from him playing these online matches in Europe that I don't think that his teams have been able to do well enough. So I think that if he does want to play CS again, even though it's grim as fuck and most people don't want to do it once they've played at that high level, you probably need to play for an Aussie team and actually try to go to like an Asia minor and qualify that way, because I just don't think you're going to find success going back to Europe and playing for these, you know, tier 2, 3 teams.
The thing is, though, I think he could easily do that. Like, you've got a few decent Aussie teams that you could potentially pilot through an Asia minor, especially with how some of these Asian teams are looking at the moment. Like, I mean, I don't think he gets on Grayhound. Let's just be real with that. But
I wanted to see him on Grayhound, but didn't happen. I know,
but like Vertex definitely, you know, you could see him potentially slotting in there. God forbid he goes on fucking Rooster. I doubt that, but like, you never know. Like, there's a lot of sharp players.
Wouldn't ever want to give up the reins, right? Like, so I think Rooster's just straight up.
I agree, but like, but what I'm saying is like, I just think that there's enough decent talent within ANZ that if you put Azza on a roster, or even let Azza build a roster, maybe he does something. Maybe he does something pretty interesting. But anyway, that's probably besides the point.
I don't know that much about the Australian scene, but I actually might lean into saying, hey, if Azra's got the money and like he's comfortably off and whatnot, maybe stay in Europe, like try and build up a tier 3 team initially, see if you can get like pieces where you have more control and whatnot, instead of just like, you know, 4 players who are pretty random. Because for me personally, even if you make the like Asian RMR, I don't think he's going to be able to actually go through, because, you know, Grayhound clearly just has the best individual players there are. I don't know how easy it would be to prove himself to Grayhound to actually slot in there as well. If he wants to make it to like majors and actually larger events, it might just be to be honest, it might just be better to stay in tier 3 Europe and just see if you can, first of all, if you're actually good, right? Because like we can't assume he's going to be. That's one major thing as well. Like, you know, you guys obviously probably have a soft spot for him. You're saying that in Aussie CS there's space. I don't know Aussie CS, but I'm telling you right now, dude, if you can't cut it in tier 3 Europe, you probably might want to look into like coaching or something like that instead. Maybe
Twisted Minds coach
just isn't enough.
There you go.
Hell, one of these Middle Eastern teams, to be fair, like, because I know these orgs might actually end up investing more with CS2 coming out and whatnot as well. Even coaching a European team, I'm sure there's like things that you can add into it, because he's an older guy with a lot of CS experience. He's been to semifinals of majors and stuff. It's hard to play. It's really hard to play this game. It's one of the most competitive esports in the entire world. There's no shame in something like that.
All right, fair enough. Look, I mean, I think there's there's no way we come to a conclusion here because obviously none of us really know Azza personally. We haven't spoken to him at all. But hopefully things sort of work out for him one way or the other. We'll sort of see where he goes, and we'll keep an eye on it. Now we should move on to I think what has been kind of the biggest news of the week, actually, when it comes to Asian CS, is the Indian CS League that got announced. So it's called Sky Esports. I believe they've been running a little bit of stuff in India. I mean, I don't keep up with Indian Counter-Strike or anything, to be honest. This is why we need fucking Blair on the show today. But maybe, Teatime, you have a bit of insight. Yeah, you're all over it, mate. I heard Pakistan and India have really great relations, so you know everything that's going on in India. But look, let's talk about this 250k USD, give or take. I think it was like 243,000 USD. It's like an insane number for any kind of tournament in our region, but specifically in India, which, to my knowledge, basically has zero professional CS going on at the moment. So, what do we think? I mean, first thing that I thought of when I saw this was that this definitely makes Dust2.India, like, I understand why that exists now, because, like, to me, it's like, okay, well, this, like, something's going on in the background there. Someone knew something was happening. They've sort of built this because this thing's coming, and so, okay, now I kind of understand. But do we think it can work? Can it work? Like, there's this, what I read, it's it starts with qualifiers in internet cafes. So you play in an internet cafe in India and you qualify through to this league, and then it's a 250k league in India. Like, is this, like, I mean, Pilly, I actually kind of wanted to get your insight on this because, you know, I think it sort of draws some parallels to whatever the fuck the Valorant thing is called in India. I don't know what the name of it is.
I don't think so.
But, like,
I don't think so. But
does this just, like, get people interested in?
Well, challenges in India. Yeah. Look, I don't think it's like that. I feel like I have a pessimistic view of this. I feel like this is kind of similar to when you have like these Chinese CS leagues that have decent prize pools, and almost look at it and it's like, I think worst case, it's going to be like a event that has an extremely large prize pool and just doesn't really have a lot of pull or impact. And I feel like this kind of thing happens a lot when they drop like a large amount of cash in towards the prize pool and it gets people's eyes on it. Kind of reminds me of like a USD or something like that. And then it's just a bit of a meme. At best case, it could be decent if they do a good job organizing it. But I don't really know much about the people that are behind it. I'm not really sure how you're going to get the pool going from like a dead CS scene to like a league is just like, how is that going to happen? I feel like quite pessimistic about it. Whereas for Challengers India, it's probably actually one of the, I would say, better run challenges events, and they seem to like be running their games on LAN. They seem to have a proper stage set up and all that kind of stuff. So I was skeptical about the Challengers India thing, because for those who don't know, I've done like a little bit of coaching with Valorant, and I did have potentially an offer to coach one of the teams who are playing in the Indian Challengers League. And I was kind of coaching them a little bit. And I was surprised all the things that I was hearing about it. And apparently, at least for the players, it's been a good experience and it's been extremely pretty well run. You know, it has issues like anything else, but I was kind of impressed at what they were able to build in terms of the Challengers Valorant like India product. I think it's definitely one of the better ones in Asia. And when I look at what they get over in India compared to what we get here in Australia for Valorant, I am fucking green with envy, boys. Like, Jesus Christ.
We don't get much.
We haven't even got a LAN with the fucking game's been out for like 3.5 years or some shit. We haven't even had a fucking LAN yet.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Teatime, what's your take on this? Because obviously you're a little bit closer geographically. I saw you tweeting that you don't think Pakistan players can compete, so maybe that's a little bit of a downer for you. But like, what do you think about?
Hang on, wait, does it have to be just Indian players in the league?
No. It's just that Pakistani players specifically will not be allowed to compete.
Yeah.
Because we can't go to India.
Do you understand the geopolitical climate over there now, Mac?
I don't.
Yeah, well,
no. We just can't go to India.
Right?
Like,
we
can't
get
visas. That's
just
all.
a couple nukes pointed at each other. You know, nothing major.
Yeah. That's all good. That's all still mates. All still mates.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. First of all, this was in the works and was supposed to be launched last year in August, I do believe. And I say this because of what I've heard inside, but also because the Kolkata Tridents, which is one of the teams that is, or one of the names that's going to be represented, literally has on their Instagram page a colossal wave coming your way from 7th August 2022. So, pretty safe to assume that this has been around in the works for a while. The league is weird. I don't really get it completely, because there's a few things, right? So first of all, from what I understand, it's existing organizations that are being assigned cities and like brands that are cities. So I don't know if those brands are like partnered with the IPL or not, because if they're partnered with the IPL, which is the Indian Premier League, it is the IPL, right?
You're talking about one, like
cricket, India's
right?
big, big cricket league is.
That is like,
because if they're partnered with those, because then that's a big game.
That's big,
because the money that's coming in is really huge. And actually, know that even in Pakistan, our PSL, which is like their equivalent of IPL, was actually interested in getting some like esports orgs under their banner as well, for maybe something similar to this for PUBG, but that just never ended up actually working out. So I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up happening because of the esports attention that PUBG and BGMI and everything got in India. But the problem was that obviously everything got banned, and then Sky Esports got locked out of Valorant as well, because Nodwin just won that bid out, because there are some conflicts of interest over there as well. Nodwin is actually technically owned by Tencent, which also owns like Riot and everything. But I don't know if that had anything part to play, because they're also like the most like competent and old school, maybe not competent, but old school organizer in India, from what I know about. So the question number one is, hey, is this associated with the IPL in any way, or are these just random city allocations because of like the LAN environment that's being set up? Question number two is, how can you have a franchised system and also qualifiers in LAN centers? I don't really understand that bit as well. So right, like there's a lot of clarity that I need coming in. Is this going to be an 8-team league? Is this going to be a 8-team plus 8-team on top league, where the first 8 teams are going to be bringing in like imports and stuff like that, and the second 8 teams are just kind of left to dry up until maybe the next year or something around that, where you figure out what this environment is going to look like maybe more accurately. So at least the teams that they have announced are pretty good so far. So they've announced 2 teams, which is S8UL. I don't know if it's pronounced Seoul or whatever, but they're really big. They've got like a lot of money behind them as well. They raised a fair bit of money. I think they're also, Pilly, maybe you can tell me about this because I'm not sure. I think they're also partnered with VLT in Valorant, which is like the biggest non-global esports team. So, Seoul Esports has got, and then the Revenant India comes in as well. And I know that Revenant's got money because, I know some like Pakistani players who were offered some decent salaries from them as well. So Revenant and Seoul definitely have money to bring in imports. And with like the amount of like Mongolian free agents going around and stuff like that, who's, from what I understand, and just out there, guys, the average salary in Mongolia is underneath like $1,000 a month for these players. So if you guys want some really good imports, those are the guys to go to. They're familiar with Asian CS as well. They'd probably be chill living in India and whatnot. So, just shout out to all of the fantastic Mongolian talent out there. So there's a chance of this working out. The only confusion that I have is, well, it's a 3-month-long league. Is that 3 months per season? Is that 3 months per year? Because if it's 3 months per year, what's going to happen throughout the rest of the year, right? Like, who's filling out the calendar? Are these guys just going to like play in Asian CS events? Is that just what's going to end up happening? Are they going to go boot camp in Europe? Like there's a lot of these questions that I think we'll find out with more information being revealed. As far as can it work, which is what you asked, Jordan, I don't actually know what that means, in all fairness. Like, do you mean like, can it sustain over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, like, are we going to see this be like, for example, Cobex Masters, where they come in, they run one event, we're all like, fuck, this is great, India's got some CS, and then it just disappears? Or is it going to be sustainable to run for
quickly? I think it should be here for at least 2 years, in my opinion. I don't know whether it stays after that, because I know Sky's got like a fair bit of like capital, both in terms of money, but also in terms of just human capital that's going underutilized, because again, they're just locked out of pretty much every Indian esport in that regards, because either it's banned or Nodwin has the rights to it, right? It's one or the other. So you're not actually getting that much. And I do think they sort of need this to be a relevant player within the market. And their ownership group is huge, so they want to be a relevant player within the esports market for India. And I also know they're looking to expand into the Middle East later on, from what I've heard and from what I've seen around the block. So this should be an interesting affair. It kind of sucks that we can't have the biggest rivalry in the region, which is obviously Pakistan versus India. But whatever, man. That's life. I hope that they're able to bring in like a lot more imports and try and play in the Middle Eastern region as well, because India should theoretically be playing in the Middle Eastern qualifiers for the APAC RMRs. But for some reason, they just always put into rest of Asia, because also they don't have someone like me who shouts on Twitter about it all the fucking time.
Maybe they will after this.
Maybe, hopefully they do, right? Like, that's what I'm sort of hoping for as well. So it should strengthen the Middle Eastern region a lot if that ends up being the case. So let's see what exactly this looks like. I don't understand the entire concept of a franchise league here at all. They're talking about like unique monetization angles and everything. I'm just guessing that's going to be like LAN cafes.
That just sounds like buzzwords, honestly.
Yeah, that just sounds like, hey, you're gonna have LAN cafes within the city where like players are supposed to play from, and then that's how you get money up until like the last ones. I don't know if you guys know about the Swedish esports league that used to happen back in 1.6, where players had to play from LAN cafes inside specific cities, and that's the only way you could actually compete in the league if you were in a registered LAN cafe that was associated with the league. So that was like not exactly a LAN situation, but it's pretty close to it. So if there's something like that, I could see like some monetization helping out, and there being at least some path to revenue, which is always nice to see within the esports scene in general, not just to Asia. But let's see how it goes. It's tough, right? Because the Indian players have been inactive for a while, and Indian CS, even over the past like 3-4 years, even before, wasn't really at the best of places. They just had like really like they had a lot of domestic competitions, which meant that they could win those and just make a living, but you never actually saw them maybe aspiring for more, which is sort of the vibe that I always got from them. I hope that this fixes that. I hope that this actually does end up leading to like imports and things like that, which strengthens the region overall. So even if it fails, we should get 2 years of a lot of imports coming in, which is good for us. So hey,
I mean, I don't think it's a bad time to do it either, with obviously all this hype around CS2 and such like that. Like, if you're going to drop something like this just randomly out of the blue, why not do it when everyone's talking about Counter-Strike? The one thing that I thought was interesting was, you've sort of brought it up a couple of times there, is the imports scenario. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but I have heard that there are potentially some imports already being looked at, and follow the trail of breadcrumbs. I'm not going to sort of give too much away, but this deadweight roster that you guys, Pilski and Mac, would know from the ANZ scene, had an Indian player.
Oh,
they're not playing on that roster anymore. The roster's now dead. They're all LFT. If you look at his profile, he's not LFT. He's retweeted the Sky Esports fucking tweet. So I'm just I don't know this for a fact, but my assumption is maybe that there are going to be some imports coming from Australia even to this event, if this is a fucking legit thing. So I mean, is it an import if he's from India to begin with? I don't know, whatever. But like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, okay, at what point do you go, oh, 250k league in India, I'm a player in tier 2 AUCS, maybe I should play for an Indian team and just fucking potentially win all this money.
And I like that because, he's played over here for X amount of time. Do we name him, or do we just keep it?
I don't care. I mean, I don't think it's
I'll call him the Bogster. I'll call him the Bogster for the moment. We'll go with that.
It's not. And by the way, I just want to point out again, if anyone's watching this and wants to take this as gospel, I actually have no inside information as to whether or not that's the case. That's just me, like, in my head, like putting two and two together. It may not be the case. It may not end up happening, but would make sense.
It makes sense if it does. If he has gone over and has been picked up by a team, then that's great for AUCS. Like, maybe not here, but if you have some players going over to play in India, if he says, hey, look, I know these guys are pretty good, you can reach out to them. There's so many players. There's what, like Vertex and Grayhound. There's your two orgs. Grayhound technically isn't even an org. It's just like being ran off stick of money essentially by, big old Will. And other than that, Encore, technically, I think they are an org, but like below that, Rooster, not necessarily an org. It's interesting. I don't know if the thing is, like, not too many players are going to be on contracts, and there's a lot of good tier 2 talent around. It's just, the scene has been in shambles for a little while.
I think you're underestimating the pool of money that these Indian teams can put up. I think this is going to look to bring in players like Smooya, bring in players even maybe from like Grayhound itself, could have players drop from them. I wouldn't be surprised, because listen, at the end of the day, if you're being offered like $7,000-8,000 of salary, especially if this ends up being connected to the IPL in any way, which is not entirely likely. Otherwise, they would have probably brought it in the initial announcement. But even regardless, teams like Seoul and whatnot, they've money. They've got like money behind them. So I think this is definitely going to look beyond even maybe where you're saying tier 2 AU. I think this is going to very much be like, hey, get Score out right from Mongolia, but while he's still
that makes a lot of sense.
Relative free agent, right? Like you maybe get Smuya out, maybe get like Montu, who's been a free agent for a while now. Montu's been unable to find a team. He keeps waiting. There's a lot of these players who could be given legitimate salaries and be brought over to Asia with this. And I think that's going to be what really excites me, because the other thing is, even if you're not getting that much salary, dude, it's a 3-month long league. It's not that much of a commitment, right? It's not that like you have to commit for an entire year. If you want to come and be like a mercenary contract, be like, whatever, man, I want to cut out the 250K. I want like, to just pop in another like 20K for me and like 3K a month for salaries, whatever, right? Like I could see a lot of players coming in for that from like Europe, from Eastern Europe, from like Russia, from Ukraine, these countries where, Russia, I think Russia and India relationships are also fine. I'm not 100% sure about the diplomatic ties over there, but where younger players from Russia might be having a harder time actually making it into international teams and the like because of the situation. There's a lot of talent out there that I think could end up in this league, and that'd be great. That'd be very exciting. Will they do a good job of broadcasting it, making stories for it, making it succeed in that way? That's sort of the big question, though.
It is a big question, but I guess we'll see. I think based on this conversation, we're all maybe, except for Pilski, quietly hopeful that this will be somewhat decent.
We'll see. I agree with the import stuff. I just don't think that necessarily excites me anymore about the league. Although, at least for challenges in India, if we were going to directly compare the two, because we often compare CS and Val, it has been the case that some pretty decent European players have been offered enough money to move to Europe, at least for the league. There's Aussie imports, there's imports from outside of India, and they have some roster restrictions. But I've definitely heard a lot of Australian talent had been offered to play in the Indian league. Some of them have gone to the Chinese league, and there's definitely European players as well that do play in challenges in India. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a similar kind of situation.
It'll be harder than for Valorant, right? Because Valorant also has only 10 teams for the big leagues across like most of the regions as well, right? So like Valorant has that artificial restriction, which makes it more worth it for tier 2 players to move away. So it'll be harder. I don't think we're going to see the same level of influx, but there should at least be some interesting players to make their way over, and that's just fun.
All right, well, looking forward to it. Hopefully it goes well. We'll continue to cover it, obviously, on Geographically Challenged, and see how it goes, I guess. Let's touch on the last couple of topics we have here. Mongolz at IEM Rio. I know you sort of mentioned this a little bit earlier, Teatime. I thought overall, I guess basically the expectation was met. They won a game. They lost to Heroic. I don't think that they were ever really going to beat Heroic, but it looked like they might have had a chance because they had... Heroic had a sub, though, for what it's worth.
Okay.
So, look, I mean, whatever. I don't think that there's too much to touch on there. Good job, Mongolz. They got a series against Imperial. You talked about Haseka already. Is there anything really to say here? And Bartak. But yeah, is there anything really to say here that's like anything new? Or is this just like, okay, same old, same old? I think it's same old, same old.
The only thing that's nice to talk about quickly, because I don't want to just only talk shit about them, is that Techno is taking Score's place. I think that's looking clearer and clearer. He's getting a lot better. Yes. I still think he's missing that consistency, but he's now sort of the main focus point within the team. Yep. So at least we know what the route forward is for the Mongolz, even if I don't know if they've quite got the shoes on to make that long-ass run.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think like Techno's obviously been freed up a little bit by this. You saw the numbers that he's been putting up, even at the Asia RMR. I think he was the second top-rated player behind Ins. But the issue is when he goes missing, like who's there? And that was kind of what happened in that third map. But I didn't watch much of this event, to be honest. But that's what happened in that third map against Heroic, is that Techno was like 7 and 19 or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, who's fragging? Annihilation's 15-15. He's not winning the game for you. Blitz was like negative, but not too bad. And it's just like, okay, well, you do need someone else that's kind of there putting those numbers up, and don't know if they have that at the moment. All right, so Mac, you wanted to talk about Dreamhack Melbourne. This is now your time. Now, in that meanwhile, in that 20 minutes that we've had, it's actually been 30 minutes, but there hasn't been another, like, they haven't retweeted tweeted what they tweeted. They've actually announced that the Danes are headed down under, which we already knew. We already knew Ecstatic was
refreshing
coming.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, me too. But that's where we're at now. So they haven't released the groups now. They've released the fact that Ecstatic is coming down to Dreamhack Challenger, or ESL Challenger at Dreamhack Melbourne. So I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Doesn't look good though. Like if they're going to tweet that, I feel like maybe they were like, "Oh shit, we weren't meant to tweet that yet," and then they removed it.
We haven't announced. Mongolz haven't announced their thing. We haven't announced this. Oh wow. Oh well. Graphics guy, social media guy, bam, either fired for typing Mongolz incorrectly and using the wrong graphic, or not waiting for the announcement to come out. Who knows? Either way, let's pretend Mongolz are still going to be there.
This is basically the Asia Minor, but like run it back. You know, you've got like the three best teams at the Asia Minor plus Vertex, which is another pretty interesting team as far as I'm concerned, just Aussie bias. So like you got the Asia Minor, but with a few European teams, like fucking cool, or NA teams.
Can we talk about the groups that were posted?
Sure.
All right, let's sub where Movistar was for Mongolz. Group A looks like it's Complexity, EG. So you got both the NA teams, Ecstatic and
just
Grayhound.
Post that in the Discord.
Yeah, because I don't have that.
Because Teatime doesn't have it.
Where this one? Bam, 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 bam. There you go. And then Group B was Bad News Eagles, Mongolz, Vertex, Rare Atom. So Vertex have a big job ahead of them. But that's a sick group. I think Bad News Eagles, I retweeted that instantly before it got deleted and said Bad News Eagles just generally looking like they should take the event unless, you know, they get jet lagged coming over from Rio or something. But
hey, what happened to OG last time?
Yeah, exactly. You know, so we'll see. Bad News Eagles having a spectacular run, you know, through the major or through the RMR and looking like one of the best teams in the world right now. So I feel like this is probably their event to lose. And just on paper, instantly looking at it, I'd say it's a Greyhound, Bad News Eagles grand final, but you never know what's going to happen. You know, Ecstatic could come out of the gates blowing up. Complexity is
pretty good though. I thought. I
mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like EG Black's like decent. I think EG Black could actually.
You got some
everyone who is
in
Complexity here.
Yeah, like Group A is pretty stacked, but Group B is arguably, you know, as stacked as well. Maybe easier for select teams. You don't know what Rare Atom we're going to get, but I'm happy Rare Atom's here to try to back up what happened over at the RMR. You know, hopefully everyone is going to be well.
I hope they don't. I hope they do better than they did.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you do. This. Look, you've gone from hating them to loving them, just like that, right?
I mean, it's just like my copium or hopium starting to creep in before I get to watch them at another event. So I don't know. Look, I think the field is more interesting to me this year than it was last year. Personally, like I'm quite interested to see what this EG Black team is sort of all about. Obviously, I love Asian CS, so I'm pretty happy that there's 4 or 3 teams there from that region. I actually like Movistar Riders as well as a team. Like I've always enjoyed kind of watching their games, so I'm pretty keen for this event. I don't know that I have like any big 2 cents to throw in here. Like I haven't really done any research or any prep for this event at all. But like you said, I actually think that there's a pretty good shout here for Greyhound. Like I definitely feel more confident for Greyhound's chances at this event than I did last year, which is the same thing that I said about the RMR as well. I just think Greyhound is looking like a better team. So if we're like obviously getting on that Aussie hopium, Greyhound I think can definitely go into at least the final day and maybe play in a semi. But I'd like to see them in the grand final too. I think that'd be cool.
It'll be interesting how it all kind of works, right? And like it's the same format as last year. You know, best of 1s in the upper bracket, best of 3s for elims.
Like
I'm actually going to be
run it back.
I'm going to be busy on Saturday. Essentially, I'll be able to watch probably the first game, but you know, I'm going to miss most of Saturday, which I'm sad about because Saturday is the day where like there's going to be the big elims.
Saturday was the big day
coming through. So
that was the Wings Up day last year.
So look, hopefully I'll be able to jump into the bleachers and catch something depending on how long the Liga Legandos goes. But other than that, it's going to be sick. Look, I feel like, you know, the teams this year better overall. The groups look closer, so it should be some sick games. But that might also mean some longer days.
Maybe.
And the other thing I want to quickly touch on as well is we're not in Rod Laver this time. We're over on the other side or one side of Margaret Court. I don't know which side we're on, if we're on the front side or the back side. But I just remember there being nowhere near as many seats as Rod Laver. So either we're going to be stacked to the rafters with people standing up all around the place, or it's going to be, very, very full.
Well, I would say that there's probably a good chance if people are standing all over the place that the marshals are going to move them on at a venue like that. But
you can't do that. People paying tickets to come and watch CS.
I don't think they give a fuck about that. Like, I know what you're saying, but the venue doesn't give a shit. They just want to make sure that the fire safety is the thing. So I don't know. I mean, look, you go.
I don't know anything about the venue. I don't know who the marshals are. I don't know what you guys are talking about. This Australian nonsense going on over here from down under. But I'll give you guys one prediction.
Okay.
Because if the groups are what they look like, and especially if Mongolz isn't playing in Movistar right as is, I know this is gonna sound super hypocritical, but I've got reasoning behind this. I think Grayhound makes the final.
I fucking knew this was coming. This is coming from the guy who called Greyhounds frauds.
I still think they're
first day of the Asia RMR.
They make the final.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so.
No, because they're gonna go assuming that they go out second seed in Group A, which again I think the format is best of ones to qualify out of the group in the upper bracket as well. I don't remember exactly what the format is for ESL Challenger events, but they could even go out first. They're probably playing up against Bad News Eagles. On the other hand, Bad News Eagles is another team that just doesn't like utility. And the Greyhound can outgun them for sure. 100%. I actually think that Greyhound might be better in terms of map pool than they don't have jet lag. They can they probably aren't the team BNE is going to be prepping the hardest for and whatnot either. It's probably they're looking at complexity and we're at them in their group and everything, right? So maybe you put in some offhand research into Greyhound and whatnot. But I actually think Greyhound's got a pretty good path to making the finals over here and losing to complexity in an obliterating 2-0 manner.
And external factors as well, you got to think about. Last time, teams were flown 1 or 2 days before the event. That's not a couple of teams came a few more days early, and they had time to sort of adjust their sleep patterns. But you're looking at the amount of EU teams coming now and the amount of NA teams coming. That's big flights. That's big changes to the body schedule. And that's also big excuses down the line. That being said, there's also, Greyhound have been whinging about it. There's no prac over here. No one wants to scrim anyone. The scrim quality is generally pretty low. So I don't know if these teams are going to have much chance to prac unless it's against, other teams from the other groups. And that's if they're even doing that. But look, I guess time will tell. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it is a good event, but I can already smell those excuses, coming through. So we'll see.
Look, I just wanted to point one thing out. Devil Walk coming back to Australia. I don't know if you guys know this, Teatime. Maybe you don't. Pilski and Mac probably do. He was in Australia once in 2014 for an event called Azubu Masters Australia.
I was. You want to go and click on that event and see who was the bottom-rated player at the event? You want to go see who was the worst-rated player at that nationals?
Yeah, you guys.
Let's go.
Man. Let's have a look at Pilly's results here. 16-7 loss, 16-1 loss, and a 16-10 loss. 0-3 in the group.
I got double digits, boys. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, against the illustrious team known as iNation.
Oh yeah, that would have been Nerox and Gunlock and that.
Yep. So anyway, I mean, I think that's a little bit of a cool throwback because that was almost not that event was the start of AUCS or anything like that, but that was right when Counter-Strike Global Offensive was kind of picking up a bit of pace in ANZ. So I don't know. He was over here as a caster with Khan for whatever reason. I don't know why that happened, but they were there, so he's back. So that's pretty cool. That's the only thing I wanted to throw in.
Azubu Masters Australia. What even is this?
It was some event, weird, random invitational pop-up event.
Oh, so when you say iNation, you mean Integral Nation, not the iNation from Serbia. Okay, because I was really confused about why there's a Serbian team coming to a $6,000 event in Australia.
Yeah, no, it was an.
Thank God there's no player stats for this event. That's all I'm saying, boys.
Thank God for that.
Thank God.
Now, we do have one thing we have to do before we go. We did get a viewer question last time, and it's from Murazrai. Everybody loves Murazrai. He's hard carrying the viewer questions on Geographically Challenged. He says, have you heard anything about the CSGO tournament in Dreamhack Japan this May? Honeycombs Cup number 9 will be the qualifier for that, with 2 spots up for grabs. Don't know if you guys have heard anything. I've done a little bit of digging, and I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think that this is Japan CS is back or anything like that. I just think this is a side stage type thing from ESL. I would not get my hopes up, Murazrai. I would say this is more of a show match type thing. it doesn't seem like it's going to be anything major. So that's all I really have to say on that. I just, I think it's cool. Obviously, it's nice to have a little bit of a exhibition match, but I wouldn't take this as like a commitment from ESL or from Dreamhack or anything like that CSGO is coming back to Japan. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
right.
Look, I hope it's something. I hope Dreamhack Japan gives us something good, but I have only heard, of ESL Australia people going over to run stuff, and that's the extent that I've heard of Dreamhack Japan. I feel like I haven't seen any marketing because I guess we're just getting blasted by, ESL Challenger Melbourne, not ESL Challenger Melbourne, but Dreamhack Melbourne marketing.
I mean, Japan is after Melbourne, so maybe after that you'll sort of see
it ramp up a bit, maybe. But I feel like our region should be like a little bit targeted by it if we're ever going to go overseas for a Dreamhack. This like going to Japan seems like a relatively inexpensive place to go if you want to go overseas for another festival of the gaming related things. So I hope it's something. I think there is going to be like. Is there a Val event? I don't know if there's a Valorant event. I don't know if there's like some other stuff going on there.
I don't know anything about Dreamhack Japan.
Yeah.
I only looked into it because
we don't know
of the
much.
CS thing, which I don't think is a big thing at all. So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much going to wrap the show up, guys. Thanks for coming. It was a long one. Anything you want to say before you go? Teatime, maybe? You're not on all the time, so...
I got the time zones wrong, and I probably would have said no if I knew that this was 6 a.m. in my time, but then I'd already said yes, and I couldn't back out at that point, but I'm glad that I made a mistake. I'm glad that I got to be here with you guys, and it's going to be fun times. Honestly, let's see what exactly comes out. I can't wait to be right about my Grayhound prediction, and look like an absolute idiot for calling them frauds before.
All right, well, I will just drop, as we close the episode out, that I have heard, unofficially, that Mongolz is not going to Dreamhack Melbourne. So
what?
There you go.
Wow.
That is where we'll end the episode. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you for the next one. Make sure you
Hire us, you fucking
subscribe,
cunts.
comment, do all the things.
Fucking hire us, you cunts.
Hire Pilski.
I'll fucking shank you.
Buymeacoffee.com/Elfishguy if you want to give me money.
What are you fixing?
And see you in episode 42. Bye.
The Asian CS scene.
Time.